My brother mocked my act of kindness. Now he is in prison, his fortune is gone, and karma served every receipt he thought he could dodge. I never imagined that my brother's true nature would be revealed through a casual act of compassion, but here we are. I am still in the process of analyzing the events that transpired last Friday. Context: I have consistently been the black sheep of the family due to my decision to establish my own path rather than participating in the family enterprise. Noah, my brother, succeeded our father, and he ensures that no one forgets it. However, I have accomplished quite a bit for myself. I am typically responsible for the cost of our family outings. Friday was intended to be a day of festivity. Noah had been boasting about a significant transaction that he had successfully completed, so I proposed that we all dine at this upscale restaurant in the heart of downtown. Noah, his wife, Isabella, and their daughter Hazel were present, as was my mother Cora. Hazel, who is 8 years old, is likely the sole authentic individual in our family, with the exception of myself. The evening began in a typical manner. Noah's typical self-importance dominated the conversation, and Isabella nodded in agreement as if he were divulging the secrets of the universe. Over the years, I have developed the ability to disregard it, instead concentrating on Hazel's narratives regarding her academic pursuits and her most recent artistic endeavor. Things began to change when our food arrived. I observed an elderly man seated on a bench outside the restaurant through the window. He was attempting to maintain his warmth in the evening chill, and he was carrying a small cart that appeared to contain all of his possessions. I have been privileged enough to be in a position where I can assist others, so I discreetly requested that our server include an additional meal in our order, their soup of the day and a sandwich, and have it packed for us to take with us. The exchange was not observed by any individual. Noah chuckled. "Are you once again assuming the role of the savior, little brother?" I chose to disregard him and proceeded with my discussion with Hazel regarding her science assignment. However, Noah was unable to relinquish it. "You know," he stated, loud enough for tables in the vicinity to hear, "it's funny how you're always trying to prove you're better than everyone else with these charitable acts. Is it because you're trying to forget when we were kids and Dad had to bail out your failed ventures?" I maintained my attention on Hazel, but she had become silent, observing the adults with that perceptive expression that children exhibit when they perceive that something is amiss. Isabella was already chuckling in anticipation of Noah's subsequent statement. The server returned with the packaged meal, and I excused myself to exit the establishment. I could hear Noah's voice echoing through the restaurant's open window as I approached the elderly man to offer him the food. "Even homeless people have more worth than you," he responded. "At least they're honest about who they are. You're just pretending you're not the same failure you've always been." The elderly man had just expressed his gratitude to me when the table erupted in hilarity. A chorus that felt as though it was drilling into my cranium was formed by my mother's nervous titter, Isabella's shrill cackle, and Noah's booming laugh. Hazel was the sole individual who maintained her silence, her eyes wide with concern and her face plastered against the window. I returned to the interior, sat down, and consumed my supper in silence. Noah continued his performance by interjecting with jokes about my charity cases, and my attempt to buy a personality. Each comment elicited the anticipated laughter. I observed Hazel pushing her food around her dish, her previous enthusiasm having been completely deflated. I withdrew my card without speaking when the check arrived. When I stood up, Noah was in the midst of another narrative regarding his business acumen. Isabella expressed her gratitude for the dinner, without even raising her head from her phone. I observed each of them, my mother, who was avoiding eye contact, Noah and Isabella, who were absorbed in their own world, and Hazel, who abruptly rose to offer me an embrace. I embraced her for a brief period of time before placing my card on the table. "The bill's paid. I need to go." That was the extent of my remarks prior to my departure. Noah was likely to erupt into another commentary regarding my dramatic exits, as I observed him rolling his eyes through the window. They are unaware that I utilize the weekend to conduct inquiries and make phone calls regarding matters that I have neglected for an excessive amount of time. Perhaps it is time to examine the extent to which my brother has been fulfilling the responsibilities of which he is so proud. I have provided more assistance to the family business than they are aware. The elderly individual was still present when I departed. He had meticulously preserved half of his sandwich by enveloping it in the paper napkin for later. He expressed his gratitude once more with a level of dignity that Noah would have been unable to comprehend. I presented him with my business card and advised him to visit my office if he required any assistance. Noah believes that one's worth is determined by the extent to which they can extract from others. He is on the brink of discovering his error. Initially, I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for your encouraging feedback on my most recent post. Numerous events have transpired, necessitating that I disclose my findings. The situation is more severe than I had anticipated. The past 2 weeks have been intriguing. My phone has been inundated with messages from family members, each of which is more urgent than the previous one. I have not replied to any of them, with the exception of Hazel's texts regarding her art endeavors. Her suffering should not be a consequence of the adult drama. The truly intriguing aspect of the situation commenced on the previous Tuesday, when I received an email from Eliza, an acquaintance of my father who is responsible for certain administrative tasks related to the family business. The subject line was straightforward. It is imperative that we engage in conversation. I was left feeling frigid after the 2-hour video call that ensued. It transpired that my brother Noah's significant transactions were not quite as substantial as he had previously asserted. Eliza had initially observed minor discrepancies in the accounts, which gradually became more apparent. She attempted to discuss the matter with my mother. However, Cora dismissed it with her customary Noah knows what he's doing attitude. I discreetly perused the records that Eliza forwarded to me over the course of the subsequent few days. Noah had been systematically siphoning money from the company for years, and the pattern was evident. Additionally, it is not limited to negligible quantities. We are discussing millions of dollars in consulting fees to shell companies that appear to be connected to personal accounts. The irony? Some of those accounts were funded by my personal investments in the family business. Guess to whom Noah turned whenever he required a capital injection to finance his purported expansion strategies. Additionally, I had consistently rendered assistance, under the impression that I was contributing to our father's legacy. Isabella contacted me yesterday. I am not expressing regret, but I am inquiring as to whether I will be present at the board meeting next week. Her voice was characterized by the artificial tenderness she employs when she desires something. I allowed it to be transferred to voicemail. However, her message was quite candid. Noah says it's just a formality, but he really needs you there to sign some papers. Family has to stick together, right? Exactly. Family. She is unaware that I have already communicated with the board members. It has been revealed that Noah has been providing the board with various versions of the company's status for months, each of which has been meticulously constructed to conceal his mismanagement. Nevertheless, numerical data is indisputable. These figures also reflect a pattern of systematic fraud and larceny. The most alarming discovery was made when reviewing the timestamps of specific transactions. Do you recall the elderly individual who was standing outside the restaurant? Noah had transferred a substantial sum to an offshore account on the same day that I purchased him dinner. This sum was precisely the amount required to cover the payroll of our father's longest-serving employees. He has been mocking others for demonstrating fundamental human decency while simultaneously playing with people's livelihoods. Cora transmitted a text message this morning. Please, Benjamin, whatever you're doing, think about your brother's family. Think about Hazel. I am contemplating Hazel. I am contemplating the manner in which her father has been robbing her future while simultaneously teaching her that cruelty is permissible, as long as it is done with a sense of humor. Tomorrow is the date of the board meeting. Noah is unaware that I have already submitted a comprehensive audit report. He is unaware that Eliza has been meticulously chronicling every detail for several months. He is unaware that his idyllic existence, which is characterized by privilege and ridicule, is on the brink of dissolution. Noah sent me a text message, which caused my phone to vibrate once more. Hey, little brother? We need you at the office tomorrow. Time to step up and be part of the family business finally. What do you say? What should I say? Nothing? Not yet. However, I have organized 3 folders of documents, one for the board, one for the authorities. Additionally, one is designated for our mother, who will be compelled to confront the transformation of her golden child. In the remarks of my most recent post, a few of you inquired as to why I did not confront Noah at the restaurant. In reality, I have been resisting him throughout my life, albeit not in the manner that he perceived. He will comprehend the precise nature of the individual he has been disparaging for the past decade tomorrow. The elderly fellow from the restaurant? Last week, he visited my office. Years ago, it transpired that he was employed by my father. The final few pieces of the puzzle were filled in by the anecdotes he shared about Noah's early days in the company. I have scheduled a vehicle to transport Hazel to her preferred art class tomorrow, following her dismissal from school. She should not be compelled to observe the impending events. At times, safeguarding family members necessitates safeguarding them from other family members. The meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. Tomorrow I will provide you with an update on the progress. But one thing is certain, Noah is about to discover that karma does not always act in a positive manner. Update 2, the board meeting has concluded. I am currently seated in my vehicle, attempting to comprehend the events of the past 4 hours. A few of you requested an immediate update, so I am providing it. At 8:30 a.m., I arrived ahead of schedule. There was only Eliza in the conference room, and she was in the process of assembling the projector. She gave me a slight nod. Everything was prepared. I positioned my 3 containers on the table and awaited instruction. At 8:55 a.m., Noah entered the room, with Isabella following in his footsteps as she had done in the past. When he recognized me, he actually smiled. That same smug smirk that he had worn at the restaurant. Finally decided to join the family business, little brother? I refrained from responding. I observed as the board members entered, followed by our mother. Cora appeared anxious, her gaze alternating between Noah and me. She was aware that something was amiss. However, she was unaware of the impending events. Noah initiated the meeting with his customary enthusiasm, discussing future expansions and growth projections. I permitted him to continue for precisely 15 minutes. Allow him to further excavate that pit. I then proceeded to access the initial folder. We should review these transactions from the past 3 years before we discuss expansion plans, I stated, passing copies to each board member. Noah's expression remained unchanged. However, his left eye twitched, a symptom that has been present in him since infancy. Isabella likely reached for her phone to initiate damage control. I had already blocked the room's signal. One board member perused the pages and inquired, "Benjamin, what is the subject of this?" I responded, "It pertains to accountability." I then turned to Noah. "Would you like to explain the consulting fees to Maxwell Holdings, or should I?" His visage was devoid of color. Maxwell Holdings, his initial shell company. Named after his college companion, poorly executed. Isabella intervened. "This is absurd. Noah has grown this company tenfold. You're just jealous because of what?" I inquired. "Because I chose my own path while your husband was stealing from employee pension funds." That captivated the attention of all individuals. Cora attempted to communicate, but I had already initiated the second folder. 3 years of systematic theft, I continued. Shell companies, fake consultancy fees, inflated contracts. But the pension fund, Noah, that's what made this criminal. "You are incapable of comprehending," Noah exclaimed, his voice quivering. "The market was volatile. I needed to cover some temporary shortfalls." "Temporary?" I extracted the bank statements. "Is that why you bought the yacht last month? To cover shortfalls?" Isabella's unwavering composure was compromised. "What yacht?" It transpired that Noah had neglected to inform his wife of his minor acquisitions. The vacation residence in the Bahamas. The offshore accounts. The debts associated with wagering. The subsequent 2 hours were characterized by a flurry of denials, accusations, and revelations. Noah employed every conceivable method. Deflection. Emotional manipulation. Even endeavoring to pin certain transactions to Eliza. However, I had documentation for each and every item. Each transfer. Each and every fraudulent contract, everything that is false. He ultimately exclaimed, "I fulfilled my obligations." Dad would have understood. He knew business isn't about playing nice. That was the moment when Cora finally discovered her voice. "Your father," she said with quietness, "fired his own brother for taking a single unauthorized commission. He would be ashamed." Noah chuckled. It was the same cruel chuckle from the restaurant. "Ashamed?" He directed his attention toward me. "He'd be ashamed of him, the disappointment of abandoning the family business to play humanitarian. At least I stayed. At least I tried to keep his legacy alive." I opened the third folder and inquired, "By stealing from it?" "The one containing the police reports." The room fell silent. Noah's complexion underwent an intriguing gray hue. "You would not?" he murmured. "Remember what you said about homeless people having more worth than me," I recited. "At least they're honest about who they are." Noah's immediate removal was approved by the board. I had already completed the requisite paperwork as the dominant shareholder, a fact that he never bothered to verify. Isabella withdrew from the voting process midway through. Her flawless mask, entirely obliterated. Silent weeping streamed down Cora's face as she remained until the conclusion. She caressed my arm after the event concluded. "Benjamin, I don't. Just make sure Hazel is okay." Noah attempted one final attempt as I was departing. "You can't do this to me, I'm your brother." I retreated. "No, Noah. What you are is a thief who happened to be born to the same parents as me. And now, you're unemployed. I hear the restaurant down the street is hiring. Try not to mock their charitable customers. The evidence is currently being reviewed by the police. Tomorrow, the board will convene to deliberate on restructuring. I have recently received a text message from Isabella's attorney. However, Hazel's art teacher conveyed the most critical message. She had the best time in class today. Won first prize for her painting. The subject? A man is seen dividing his sandwich. Occasionally, karma operates in a manner that is enigmatic. Occasionally, it functions precisely as intended. I will provide another update once all matters have been resolved. Right now, I must convene with the trustees of the pension fund. In contrast to certain individuals, I am a proponent of repaying my debts. Summing up, I have not provided an update in over a month, and I have committed to disclosing the outcome. Revenge, as the saying goes, is a dish that is best enjoyed chilled. I received mine with an accompanying accompaniment of complete destruction. We should commence with Noah. Do you recall how he consistently boasted about his business acumen? The authorities did not find it to be as remarkable as they had anticipated. Last week, they conducted an invasion of his residence. It transpired that my evidence was merely the top of the iceberg. Records of money laundering dating back 5 years were discovered. The most delightful aspect? It is likely that he believed himself to be too intelligent to be discovered, as he had taken meticulous notes of everything. 2 days subsequent to the board meeting, Isabella submitted a divorce petition. Not out of moral outrage, mind you. However, I ensured that she was informed about Noah's fiancée in the Bahamas. The individual for whom he acquired a residence using company funds. The same residence that Isabella believed was an investment property. Her attorney reached out to me in order to obtain evidence for the divorce proceedings. Everything was supplied by me. Without cost. The expression on Noah's face when he realized that his wife's counsel was aware of every detail of his financial crimes. Invaluable. However, I was not yet finished. Do you recall the elderly gentleman from the restaurant? He was not a typical former employee. He was the original associate of my father, and he was instrumental in the establishment of the company. Years ago, Noah had coerced him into early retirement by fabricating performance evaluations. His pension has been reinstated with retroactive pay, and he has been appointed to the board. What was his initial action? Voting to authorize a comprehensive audit of all decisions made by Noah over the past decade. The local news was impacted by the pension fund scandal. Noah's image was prominently featured on the front page as he was led from his residence. Who are his acquaintances in the upper level of society? They disappeared. It is remarkable how rapidly individuals distance themselves when the facade collapses. Cora attempted to mediate the situation by imploring me to withdraw the charges. She begged, "He is still your brother." I presented her with the surveillance footage that captured Noah ridiculing elderly employees as he reduced their retirement benefits. After that, she discontinued her defense of him. Company, I have assumed responsibility. However, it was not in the manner that Noah had encouraged me to. I have transformed it into a corporation that is owned by its employees. Equity is now granted to all employees who have served for an extended period. The expression on their features when they discovered that they would be shareholders, rather than mere employees. That is the embodiment of authentic business leadership. Isabella's social circle has collapsed. It has been discovered that individuals are reluctant to associate with individuals who were aware of pension fraud and chose to remain silent. Last week, her membership in the country club was terminated. It appears that they have established standards. Who knew? Noah's final attempt. Noah attempted to reach out to me via his attorney, offering to mend things if I dropped the charges. I forwarded the message to the prosecutors as evidence of attempted witness tampering. He is currently facing a sentence of 15 years, not 5. However, the genuine karma arrived yesterday. Noah believed himself to be astute by concealing funds in cryptocurrency accounts. He was unaware that I had been monitoring those accounts since the very beginning. He was unable to retrieve them from his parents' residence, where he had been residing since the divorce, as they were empty. Every penny had been transferred to a trust fund for Hazel. Regarding Hazel, she is currently residing with Isabella's sister. I have arranged for her to attend the most prestigious art school in the metropolis. Her college education will be funded by the trust fund. Noah is incapable of handling any of it. His daughter will be afforded opportunities that he is unable to control or seize. The elderly individual who initiated this entire situation? He is flourishing. I have established a foundation in his honor to provide assistance to retired employees. Who was the initial recipient? Noah's former aide, whom he terminated for excessively inquiring about the accounting. Yesterday, I received a letter from Noah's penitentiary. He stated that he has finally comprehended the concept of genuine worth. I had it framed and posted it in the boardroom, adjacent to the new company mission statement. Integrity is not negotiable. Some of you inquired as to whether I harbor any remorse for the devastation I caused to my brother's life. No, I do not. He had the opportunity to prioritize compassion over cruelty and integrity over greed for an extended period of time. He consistently selected the incorrect option. Last night, I returned to that restaurant. Seated at the same table. However, this time, I was not accompanied by my family. I was present with the elderly man, who is now a member of the board, and we deliberated on the organization's new charitable foundation. I observed an individual who appeared to be Noah's erstwhile golf partner bussing tables as we departed. Karma is a process that requires time to unfold. However, receipts are included when it arrives. This will serve as my concluding update. The organization is flourishing. Hazel is thriving in her new educational institution. And Noah? It appears that orange has become his new signature color. Occasionally, the most effective form of retribution is not merely observing an individual's downfall. It is ensuring that they have a comprehensive understanding of all the losses they experienced when they reached the nadir. My husband's ex and male tried to humiliate me for years until their almost anniversary stunt backfired and he finally cut them off for good. For reference, I, 28F, and my husband Shah, 28M, have been married for 2 years. Shah and I dated for 2 years before, but we'd known each other since high school. We didn't start dating for a few years after graduation. I met him at a restaurant unexpectedly, exchanged numbers, went on a few dates, and that's how we ended ourselves here, nearly 4 years later. Shah was dating Diane, another high school girl, before I met her. She was a grade below us and had known Shah since middle school. He and I were not really close, but we had a lot of shared acquaintances back in school, so I saw a lot of him and Diane together. After we graduated from high school, I lost touch with him because he moved to college in a distant state and we didn't see much of one another. When we finally met at the restaurant some years later, I asked him about Diane. He told me that they had split up a year and a half ago. She was the one who dumped him because she wanted different things in life and needed a break to travel the world. But she promised to come back to him someday. Which simply meant she wanted to be alone for a time, date other men without guilt, and retain Shah as a backup plan. So, following the breakup, he remained friends with her but reduced contact. By the time we met, he'd nearly completely moved on from Diane. I had also begun to see him in a new light. He had matured much since our previous meeting in high school. Shah and I reconnected 4 years ago and soon became friends. We still have the same laid-back relationship. He claims that is something he never had with Diane. She was continually trying to get him to chase after her because she thought it made her more beautiful. She flirted with other guys, went out with her friends without speaking to him for days, and never asked Shah how he felt about anything. He stayed with her because he was young and stupid, and he felt obligated to make the relationship work because they had been together for so long. Another factor was that his mother, Sharon, 49F, was a major fan of Diane. Diane had met my mother-in-law numerous times while they were together. Sharon praised Diane and pretended to be someone else whenever Diane visited. According to Shah, Diane did the same thing for Sharon, showering her with accolades and acting like a completely different person to impress her. They would chat about other people, particularly Shah's female acquaintances, whom he despised, and sometimes even about him. Shah's aunts and cousins. Diane is also conventionally attractive, which makes Sharon appreciate her even more. I'm not sure why that exists, but it does. Shah told me that Sharon continued to invite Diane to family occasions and holiday dinners after their breakup. He tried talking to his mother about it, urging her not to invite Diane, but Sharon refused. She stated that she really liked her and that even though they had split up, she and Diane remained friends, so she saw nothing wrong with inviting her around. They spoke almost every other week and were really good friends. So this persisted even after I began dating Shah and he introduced me to his family. I felt strange about it at first, and still do. But there was a reason I had tolerated it for so long. Shah initially brought me home to meet his family for Christmas 4 years ago. We had been dating for about 8 months. Diane was also present, and she treated me horribly the entire time. She noticed my appearance, height, clothes, makeup, you name it. She was skilled enough to make everything sound funny, as if she was joking, but Shah knew exactly what she was doing and stood up for me. Sharon, on the other hand, quickly shut it down and asked me if I had a problem with Diane's jokes, putting me in the position. I knew that if I indicated I wasn't good with it, they'd make it appear as if I was insecure or jealous, putting me down even further. So I resolved to present a strong front and say, I don't care. It was petty of me, but the moment I said it, I saw their expressions. They seemed surprised and annoyed. That's when I realized I'd done the correct thing. When Shah and I came home, he apologized to me for Sharon and Diane's behavior. He promised me he'd make sure his mother stopped inviting Diane to family functions. But I was the one who warned him not to do that. I knew the type of woman they were, and I didn't want to lose to them, if you get my drift. I didn't want them to believe they were intimidating me or making me feel insecure. Because they had not. And I felt compelled to prove it. I explained this to Shah, and although he was astonished by my approach, he stopped interfering after that day. Since then, Diane has attended every single family function Sharon has thrown. Every time they act the same way with me. Snide remarks. Backhanded compliments. Constant attempts to bring up Diane's past with Shah, even when it is entirely unrelated, in order to make things difficult for me. I've confronted everything with a brave face, and I try to remain as unmoved as possible. Sharon has even stated multiple times that Diane was her ideal daughter-in-law and would have made a better bride for Shah. Indirectly, of course. It was bothersome, but I tried to seem unconcerned. Because as long as Shah was by my side, I didn't mind what others said. Sharon and Diane could talk for hours on end, and it wouldn't matter to me. That's how I've handled things for the past 4 years. And I intended to maintain the same mindset for the next 4. I was not going to be the first one to snap, that was for sure. Now let's get into what actually happened, the incident that brought me here. Sharon became 49 years old 3 days ago. Every year, she throws a big celebration for her family and friends. This year, Shah did not want to attend. Instead, he wanted to attend his co-worker's engagement celebration, which happened to fall on the same day. And he had good reasons. His co-worker was only getting engaged once, and they were really close. However, Sharon refused to accept it. She made him pledge to attend her birthday party instead. And after days of pressure, she wore him out. So we decided to go. Diane was invited to the function, just like any other. And she dressed to the nines. For some reason, Sharon was also overdressed. But it was her birthday, so I let that one go. Shah and I had agreed to leave after Sharon cut the cake and attend the engagement celebration. At around 5:30 p.m., my father-in-law brought out the cakes, and to our astonishment, there were 2. One of them stated, "Happy almost anniversary." Shah and I were puzzled. We had no idea what the other cake meant, and neither did anyone else. We waited for the birthday girl to explain. Instead, Diane took over. To our surprise, she took Shah's arm and dragged him to stand close to her. We were too surprised to respond because he had suddenly been forced into the spotlight, and everyone was staring at him. Then Diane began chatting. She began by telling that almost 10 years ago, on Sharon's birthday, Shah had gotten down on one knee and handed her a promise ring. They were both 18 years old at the time, set to go to various colleges. 10 years later, she still wore the same ring. To prove that, she proudly raised her hand in front of everyone. Then she wrapped Shah in an awkward hug, which he did not respond to. Sharon encouraged them, smiling as she explained that she was ready to let them steal her thunder this time so they could enjoy what may have been. The whole situation was so absurd that Shah and I stood there with our mouths agape, just like the rest of the guests. For several minutes, no one spoke. Because what could you possibly say in response to something this insane? But Diane kept going. She joked about Shah being her almost husband, and Sharon being her almost mother-in-law, thus today was their almost anniversary. As if we didn't get the joke. Then Sharon sliced the so-called anniversary cake. She started by feeding Diane a slice. Then she tried feeding it to Shah. That's when Shah appeared to snap back to reality. He backed away from his mother when she brought the cake close to his mouth. Sharon was astonished and questioned him, "What's wrong?" That's when all hell broke loose. Shah exploded. He began shouting at Sharon and Diane, calling them out for what they had just done. Years of pent-up rage eventually spilled out, right there, in the thick of the celebration. He ripped into them, calling them shallow, ignorant, and so self-centered that they had become entirely insane. He admitted that he felt humiliated to have ever been engaged with Diane. He was even more mortified that he was biologically connected to Sharon. Because they were the trashiest women he'd ever met. I have to admit that his reaction surprised me. Shah is normally a pretty calm guy. He rarely yells or gets furious with others. It takes a lot to drive him to the brink. But Sharon and Diane had finally finished it. With each other's assistance, of course. After shouting at them, Shah stormed out of the party, followed by me. Instead, we took a taxi directly to his co-worker's place. I tried to talk to him in the cab, but he was clearly agitated. He said he didn't want to talk about his mother or his ex at that time. So I dropped it. When we arrived at the engagement party, his attitude gradually improved as he greeted his friends and coworkers. I was happy to see he was doing well. When we returned home, Shah was in a much better mood. So I decided to bring up what happened at Sharon's party again, hoping that he would want to talk about it now. But he didn't. Instead, I received an earful about how some of this was also my fault. When I recalled the event, he admitted that Sharon and Diane had attempted to embarrass me with that ludicrous cake. But I wasn't completely innocent. He reminded me that for years, I had forced him to remain silent and let Sharon and Diane do whatever they wanted. Because I felt I needed to demonstrate that I didn't care. I had made it all about myself. My urge to show others how unconcerned I was. But in doing so, I entirely forgot that Shah was equally implicated in this mess as I was. And it was getting on his nerves. While Sharon, Diane, and I were competing in mind games, Shah was hurting. Nobody bothered to check on him or ask how he felt about anything. He did not anticipate his mother or ex to show him any consideration. But he expected it of me. And in that moment, he told me something that struck me hard. I'd let him down by prioritizing my own feelings over his in the scenario. That night, I protested with him, telling him that he was being far too harsh and cruel to me. But now that I've had time to think about it, I believe he was correct. I had pushed my husband to remain silent for years while his mother welcomed his ex to family gatherings only to bring me down. Okay, I apologized to Shah this evening. I read the comments, did some reflection, and even discussed it with a few of my friends. I concluded that I was in the wrong here, and that what he said that day was accurate. I had been putting my feelings before of his, and I was so busy behaving as if Diane and Sharon's behavior didn't disturb me that I didn't even consider the possibility that it did bother Shah. For his sake, I should have allowed him terminate this if he wanted to. I forced him to ignore his own feelings for years so that I could win a sick mind game with individuals I didn't even like. And in doing so, I risked the one connection that was most important to me. I had made a serious mistake and realized I needed to make amends. Shah had been giving me the cold shoulder since the party, and I had tried to pretend it didn't bother me. It's something I've always done, and it's been a problem for a long time. My natural reaction is to pretend that things don't upset me, even when they do. I want to be viewed as unconcerned and unaffected by anything, so I act like it and suppress my emotions. I now recognize that this is a really harmful coping method. I absolutely need to work on this if I want my marriage to work. I skipped work today and decided to get him dinner at his favorite restaurant, as well as a chocolate cake with the words, "I'm sorry," written on it. I returned home, set everything up, and tried to make it as romantic as possible, because I know he likes sappy rom-com style apologies. Also, I was really sorry for what I had put him through, even if it was inadvertent. He arrived home from work in the evening and was surprised to see what I had planned for him. He forgave me within 15 minutes of his arrival. We had a tearful reconciliation, and I ended up crying because I was afraid I'd lose him over it. When he wasn't speaking to me, I felt completely adrift. We spoke it out, and everything is well between us now. Since I admitted my mistake, I revealed to him my constant desire to be viewed as calm and laid back, someone nonchalant for no other reason than it seems cool, and because I don't want to be vulnerable in front of others. That is the underlying explanation for this entire catastrophe. He recognized and respected the fact that I admitted it and stated that I needed to work on it rather than shoving it down and suppressing my emotions. He also apologized for being nasty to me, which I don't believe he needed to do. He did it because he is a good man and loves me, which makes me feel like I have won in life. After supper, we finally discussed what had transpired to Diane and Sharon. I hadn't heard from either of them since the party, and my battle with Shah had pushed the whole issue out of my mind. Sharon, on the other hand, had been continually texting Shah, attempting to persuade him to apologize to Diane, who was supposedly distraught and stricken with grief as a result of Shah's treatment of her. I had to work pretty hard not to roll my eyes when I read the messages Sharon sent. She was clearly attempting to guilt-trip him into apologizing to the woman. Sharon pretended that the cake and the entire almost anniversary farce were nothing more than a joke. There was nothing deeper behind it. But I called BS on it. This was a married man they were pulling this scam on. Surely, they had the intelligence to recognize how improper and insulting this was towards me. They did it on purpose, since they wanted to humiliate me during the party. So they couldn't simply dismiss it by saying, it was just a joke, and pretend Shah had overreacted. The hubris of them to claim that Shah and I had gone too far or disrespected them by leaving the party was ridiculous. Shah had previously been ignoring her communications, but when I got those messages today, we finally agreed to stop communicating with her. We'd had enough of her crap. And we didn't want any part of it anymore. 3 days ago, Shah and I blocked Sharon from all of our social media accounts. Shah also told his father that he didn't want to speak with his mother anymore. His father appreciated his decision, because he knew Shah's emotions. But he also refused to interfere. He loves his wife and knows he can't leave her, so he's remaining completely out of it, as he has for the past 5 years. I don't agree with my father-in-law's attitude, but I can't do anything about it. Everything had been running perfectly for the preceding 2 days. But then, today, Shah contacted me out of the blue and said he needed to run to the hospital. Apparently, his mother had fallen from the top of the steps and fractured her leg. Shah's maternal uncle had informed him, and he fled immediately upon hearing the news. We both arrived at the hospital at roughly the same time. But before we could enter, Sharon stopped us in our tracks, and she was perfectly well. She and Diane had surprised us in the hospital's parking lot. Then they nonchalantly informed us that this was the only way to grab Shah's attention, because he had blocked them everywhere. They didn't expect me to show up with him. Instead of acknowledging me, they ignored me and began talking to Shah as if they had done nothing wrong. Diane attempted to explain that everything she did at the party was a prank and that she never meant to insult him. Sharon backed her up. Shah allowed them to converse for a bit. And then, much to their surprise, he told his mother and ex to F off. Then he went away with me once more. Sharon started shouting at us as we got into our different cars. But we didn't stay around to hear what she had to say. I'm sure she was cursing at us, but it didn't matter. She lied to get to meet Shah again. And I couldn't think of anything more manipulative than that. Shah returned home because he was too stressed. I, on the other hand, needed to return to work. While at work, I received a call from an unknown number. It turned out to be Sharon. She screamed at me for 15 seconds before I finally disconnected the call. I'd merely been taken off guard while working. Else, I wouldn't have responded. All I heard were hand-picked swear words spoken at maximum volume. I had no idea why she was furious at me. I had nothing to do with Shah's behavior. She had pushed her own son to that point, not me. Anyway, I blocked her and attempted to go on with my day. When I came back home at 6 p.m., I finally got to speak with Shah. He told me that he had also blocked the rest of his mother's relatives, including his uncle, because it was obvious that they would go to any length to persuade him to forgive Sharon and speak with her. That's all we can do right now since they're not threatening us in any manner, and they're not stalking us on a regular basis, so a restraining order is not an option. Shah also told his father about what happened today, but he still refuses to intervene. It's his choice, and Shah adores his father, so I won't say anything right now. But, personally, I don't think my father-in-law's behavior is a wonderful example of being a good father. The least he could do was speak to his wife and advocate for his son. But he won't even do it. Shah adores his father, but the man has never stood up for him when it comes to Sharon. I've only kept my mouth shut out of respect for their relationship. Otherwise, I'd have a lot to say about how incredibly selfish his entire family is. They never think about anyone other than themselves. I will never understand how a man like Shah could come from such a family. Hello everyone, it's been a week since I last updated. Yesterday, Shah and I decided to file a restraining order against Sharon and Diane because of something they did to me. Or, more precisely, attempted to do. 3 days ago, on Thursday, I was returning from work. On Thursdays, I normally go to a coffee shop near my office and purchase myself a frappuccino as a treat. Last Thursday, I was planning to do the same. But as soon as I walked into the shop, Diane and Sharon rose from their chairs, where they had been waiting for me, and rushed straight at me with their coffees. Before I could even respond, they both flung their drinks in my face. Then Diane took some whipped cream from her cup and put it into my hair. I was stunned. I just froze on the spot as everyone laughed. The baristas ran over to assist me clean up. They did their best to remove the muck off of me, so a big thanks to them for basically quitting their work to assist me. Even the other customers were patient and kind. When I finally got the most of it off, my clothing were sticky and unpleasant, and my hair was horrible, but at least I was cleaner. Some of the other patrons inquired about me, and one even asked if I wanted to contact the cops. So I did. I reported Diane and Sharon and filed charges against them. However, they just received a fine, a slap on the wrist, because this was a misdemeanor and they had not physically hurt me. Unless you consider my clothes, which I can't wear to work again due to fading brown coffee stains on the front. Nonetheless, we filed charges, and the incident is now on their record, which will strengthen our case. Shah wanted to make this public, so he posted about it on social media so that more people would be aware and avoid Diane and his mother. But he changed his mind when he saw I just wanted to move on from this without any further complications. Honestly, that encounter shook me more than I expected. It may seem ridiculous, but it actually made me think. If things had escalated, it might have been far worse than them throwing coffee in my face. They could have really injured me if they wanted to. They were familiar with my routine thanks to my social media presence. They had my address. This could have gone extremely wrong. Shah and I had been considering moving since we had a good financial year. But with what occurred, we will definitely be going. We had also been thinking about having children and we're going to start trying soon. But my in-laws will never meet my children. We've also formally cut off my father-in-law, who refused to intervene even after the coffee incident. Shah got into a heated argument with him and eventually cut him off. And honestly, I am relieved. I'll never have to see or hear from these folks again. Mother gave me up for adoption after Dad died and had an affair with my uncle. Years later, she found me online, pretending to reconnect. My mother recently got in touch with me, a 17-year-old girl, after we hadn't spoken for 10 years. When I was 7 years old, she placed me for adoption, and happily, I was able to locate a family that would adopt me. I will refer to my biological mother as Julia and my adoptive parents as Mom and Dad for the sake of clarity when I describe what transpired. At the age of 20, Julia gave birth to me with my biological father. I was the reason she had to leave college. They were married shortly after my biological father's graduation from school. He was diagnosed with leukemia when I was about 3 years old, and he died not long after my 7th birthday. Since my mother gave me away and I moved in with my new family just one day after my dad's death, I suppose the process of relinquishing custody had already begun long before his death. Even though 10 years have gone by since then, I can still recall everything as clearly as if it were yesterday. I was really angry and perplexed by what was happening. Many people assured me that I would be all right, that my father was in a better place, and so on, but all I wanted was to check on him. Even though he had been quite ill, he was always available when I wanted to visit him. But after Dad died, I was not even permitted to bid him farewell. When my new family arrived the day after my dad's death, I had hardly had time to register and process these things. According to my mother, these individuals would look after me for a few days, but those days quickly grew into weeks, months and years. I continued to wait for my mom to get in touch with me. At first, I recall crying a lot about this because I felt like my mother and my family had deserted me. My biological grandparents visited me a few weeks after my parents took me in, and they have remained in contact with me ever since. I was too young to hear the truth at the time. However, they were no longer able to avoid my questions when I was about 14. Since I was well aware that I was adopted, I simply wanted to know what had occurred with my birth mother. I clearly recall getting along with my birth parents when I was younger, so I was just curious as to why all of this had occurred. Eventually, I learned the truth from my parents and grandparents. It seems that my mother was distraught to learn that my biological father had leukemia. However, she began an affair with my uncle rather than supporting him. Even while that was terrible in and of itself, no one was aware of it until 6 months before my dad's passing. At that point, my uncle's health had begun to deteriorate significantly, and Julia knew she wanted to be with him as soon as my father was gone, so they decided there was no use in continuing to hide their romance. My uncle and Julia discussed it with their parents. Despite their clear revulsion at what was happening, my grandparents remained silent about it out of concern for my ailing father. They didn't want my father, who was already dealing with a lot, to learn about any of this, and I was too little to comprehend. My uncle and Julia also declared that they were not wanting to raise me and were thinking of placing me for adoption about the same time they told my grandparents about the affair. Despite all of the commotion, Julia was quite clear about what she wanted. She apparently claimed that she didn't even want to be a mother and that she had been far too young when she gave birth to me. Her parents urging that she have me and marry my father was the only reason she felt ready at the time. Her life would have been quite different and she probably wouldn't have done either of those things if her parents hadn't put pressure on her. She didn't want me either, and she was going to place me for adoption since that my father would no longer be involved. They waited until my father died since it was clear that they could not send me away while he was still living. They then gave my parents permission to finally take me in. My predicament astonished even my adoptive parents, but they were only interested in adopting a kid to complete their family because they had been having trouble becoming pregnant again after their first pregnancy and it was too risky for my mom anyhow. My parents informed me they hadn't heard about me from any adoption agencies, even though I know they likely wanted to adopt a much younger child. Since she was formerly acquainted with Julia, it was actually one of my mom's cousins who informed her of my predicament. They realized they had to get me out as soon as they learned about me. They spoke to my mother face to face without the involvement of any agency, and they didn't even give a damn about my age. Even my mother was having trouble finding a willing adopter for a 7-year-old through the agency, so she consented to let them adopt me. 4 months prior to my dad's death, they had a conversation with Julia, and everything was settled a few weeks prior to his passing. Even my parents had assumed that I would likely be staying with Julia for a few days at the very least after my father's death, But she sent me out the very next day. I was quite happy that Julia had chosen to place me for adoption after I learned the reality. People typically choose younger children when adopting, therefore I was fortunate to find such amazing parents. I discovered a truly amazing family. I couldn't be happier because I adore my parents and older brother. Additionally, I have 4 sets of grandparents, so you can only imagine how pampered I've been. After my dad died, no one stayed in contact with my uncle or Julia from my early years. My grandparents had planned his funeral, but they weren't even present. I was there because I was already going through a really perplexing time and it was a very serious scenario. It would be best for me to get used to my new existence, they believed. I expected to feel unwelcome or at least a little sad after learning the truth about why I had been placed for adoption and why Julia had left my life. However, I was primarily relieved that I had met parents who genuinely wanted me and had avoided living with my biological mother. Now that I'm 17 and will be attending college in a few months, I seldom ever give Julia or my uncle or their activities a second thought. But because Julia contacted me on Instagram to ask if I would be open to meeting with her and making amends, I have been thinking about them nonstop for the past several days. It's clearly easy to find me because I have a public account, but I didn't understand why she was contacting me after all these years. I therefore made the decision to find out why she suddenly wanted to patch things up with me before I consented to anything. In a lengthy and sincere message, she expressed her regret for letting go of me and choosing to focus on her life with my uncle rather than her role as a mother, even though a lot of time had gone. She wanted me to know that she was not totally incorrect, even though she acknowledged that it was not her position to insist that I return to her as her daughter. She asserted that her sole error was taking on too much at an early age before fully comprehending the consequences. She was under a lot of strain, which caused her to make numerous poor choices. Despite what my family may have told me, Mom maintained that she never regretted having me. She wanted to make amends with me since she simply wasn't prepared to become a mother. I was fascinated, so after giving it some thought, I chose to say yes. I simply went ahead and met her without telling my parents or grandparents. It wasn't until I met her that I realized she needed my assistance and wasn't only seeking a meeting to patch things up. I should have recognized it sooner, but regrettably, I tend to strive to find the positive aspects of everyone, including Julia. She seemed so friendly and pleasant when we first met for lunch 2 days ago. She attempted to give me her version of events, claiming that her parents had forced her to take care of me, marry my father, and leave college. She simply wasn't prepared for any of it, but she felt pressured by her parents to conform. The news of her husband's condition was the final straw for her to have an affair after she started to feel smothered in her marriage. She claimed that because she thought my uncle was the love of her life, she didn't regret having the affair. She has been happily married to him for the past 8 years and was happy to find him. She broke down in tears as she spoke about my uncle, telling me that part of the reason she had come to me was because their marriage was now in peril. She required my assistance in making amends with both her parents and my father's parents. They cut her off for the past 10 years and didn't want anything to do with her or my uncle after she secretly placed me for adoption. In the past, Julia and my uncle had been okay with this distance, but lately, my uncle had begun to argue with her because he wanted to make up with his parents. After everything that had transpired, he was aware that they would never accept him back. For some reason, he was blaming Julia, thinking that things wouldn't have turned out so badly if she had waited a little longer and not given up on me so quickly. Her only option was to have me speak with my grandparents and persuade them to make amends with her and my uncle. Then perhaps, she reasoned, she could prevent her marriage from disintegrating. She clarified that she and my uncle had been having a lot of arguments over the last few weeks and that this was the only solution she could think of. To be honest, I regret going to meet that woman more than anything else in my life. As she said, she was obviously not present to truly apologize, provide an explanation, or simply make apologies. She was only there because she believed I could help her with her marital problems. I doubt I would want to assist her, even if I could. Given how self-centered she has been, she doesn't deserve my assistance. I listened to her and informed her that I couldn't be moved by her crocodile tears. As I was about to go, she added that I would have had a greater understanding of her predicament if I had been in her shoes. She said she did her best to be a good mother to me, but she felt compelled to become a mother before she was ready. I was no different from the others if I was unable to recognize that because I had been brainwashed by my family. I was pretty irritated by that. Even though she had only been my mother for 6 or 7 years, she had all the support in the world. I was certain that my grandparents had not advised her to leave college. It was her own decision. My mother had decided to have me, they had often informed me. They had simply told her to have me and see where it went, without pressing. She took their counsel as coercion, and if I had to choose who I would trust, I would choose my grandparents. I advised her to find another place to sell her baloney. I didn't believe it. I also informed her that I didn't trust a word she said. She cheapened her apologies by attempting to persuade me to restore her relationship without attempting to mend it herself, even though I had been prepared to offer her an opportunity to be truthful and make amends. I told her that since we weren't dating, I wasn't required to help her in any way. I may have been born to her, but my mother, not her, reared me. After that, I left the restaurant and returned home. I discovered she had texted me after I came home. She was crying in the voice note. The background sounds indicated that she was still in the restaurant. I felt a little bad about that because it takes a lot of heartbreak to cry that much in public. She was crying and claiming that it was terrible of me to declare that we had no relationship in the voice message. She said that I was her biological mother and that she would always be my biological mother. Despite everything, Mom still thought of me as her daughter. However, I'm not sure what to say to her. I simply no longer think of her as my mother, and I don't want to feel guilty about it. For the last 10 years, she has not been my mother. She was crying on the phone, and that makes me feel messy and conflicted. However, I still can't bring myself to block her. She is a human person who shared a bond with me, even though I don't consider her to be my mother. Edit, ***. Hello. I haven't told my family about meeting Julia, even though I believed it was obvious in my post. I didn't notify them in advance since I don't think they would support my choice. I intended to make this choice on my own for the time being, but I know I owe it to them and I will tell them. They all despise her, and with good reason, so I knew that if I informed them, they wouldn't have allowed me to meet her. I'm positive of that. I suppose the only reason I went to see her in the first place was to get closure. I had no idea what to anticipate. I wanted to speak with her one final time, and I knew she would apologize. I suppose I wasn't thinking clearly since her reaching out evoked a lot of conflicting feelings in me. In any event, I met her, and it's over now. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't alter my choice. I found the closure I needed. I have no regrets about what I did. Sometimes you have to put everyone else aside and follow your instincts, even if they are incorrect. It's your error at least. First update. At last, I informed my family that I had met Julia. They were quite unhappy about it, as was to be expected. She started sending me texts and calls, requesting that I talk to her again and give her an opportunity to explain herself. I blocked her a few days ago after we met last week. I had no idea what she would say to me, but I no longer wanted to find out. All I needed from her was closure, which I received after our one encounter. She only required my assistance. It's not like she really wanted to talk to me and put things right. After our altercation at the restaurant, I'm very certain that's the only reason she got in touch with me. I knew it was time to tell my family about our encounter, and I didn't want to talk to her again. I therefore sat down with my parents and all of my grandparents today and gave them an explanation of everything. My parents were furious that I had left without telling them who I was meeting and that I hadn't talked to them about it. However, they appeared to comprehend. My grandparents were the ones who were furious with me. I quietly listened to their frequent reprimands because I earned them. I ought to have consulted them first. They were most concerned that, given my mother's propensity for manipulation, she might have attempted to brainwash me or paint them as the bad guys. When they were finished, I told them that I had just met her to get closure. I felt compelled to explain my reasoning, even though I didn't expect everyone to grasp it right now. I just expressed regret for doing it behind their backs. Everyone seemed to be placated when I vowed never to be untruthful with them again. After that, we talked about Julia's motivation for contacting us and her remarks regarding my uncle's desire to make amends with his parents. We all agreed that the matter was more complicated than she was making it out to be. They were probably in difficulty and in need of assistance if she was attempting to coerce me into assisting her in getting back in touch with the family. On the phone and in person, Julia had been truly distraught and had said that her marriage was in peril. My uncle was upset with her, and my grandparents thought she was probably speaking the truth. We chose not to get involved since it wasn't our place, regardless of the truth. The day Julia and my uncle declared their relationship while my father was still unwell, my grandparents made it clear that they no longer regarded them as family. When Julia gave me away without even talking to them or giving me an explanation, it was the last straw. They were just fortunate that my grandparents were permitted to stay in my life by my adoptive parents. In any case, Julia is now blocked by me. I will never speak to her again, no matter what. She has been frantically attempting to get in touch with me, messaging me about how her life and marriage are failing and how much she needs me. I feel bad for not paying attention to her, but really, what does she expect me to do? I couldn't persuade her in-laws or my grandparents to get back together, even if I wanted to assist. I wouldn't want to talk to her either if I were in their shoes. It's quite reasonable for me to break up contact with her at this time. She may make other accounts in an attempt to get in touch with me, but I know that won't work. I'll let her know I'm not interested if she makes another attempt. I will report her if she continues to annoy me. I heard my grandparents discussing possible reasons for my uncle's desire to make amends. They said it might be money problems. We have no idea what they have been up to because no one in the family has been in contact with them. We are aware that they still reside in the same city, but that is all we know. In the past, Julia was a stay-at-home mother, but who knows now? It just serves to highlight how heinous their actions are if my grandparents are correct and Julia and my uncle are attempting to get back together due to financial difficulties. Making contact with a daughter they left behind 10 years ago in order to make amends with their parents in exchange for money. That is among the lowest things in the world. I hope they receive what they are due if that is indeed the case. Second update. Today, Julia contacted me once more. About 10 days ago, I blocked her everywhere. I assumed she had given up after a week of not communicating with me. However, she was able to discover my school's address somehow. I suppose this is the reason we shouldn't post our private information on open sites. The hard way was the lesson learned. Anyway, she appeared out of nowhere today as I was making my way home from school on foot. It took place around 1 block from the school. I typically walk home because I live nearby. She began shouting for me to get into her car as soon as it drew up. I didn't trust her, so I told her I wouldn't be letting her in. I told her that if she attempted to cause trouble, I would yell in the middle of the road and she would be dealt with. She replied that she only wanted to communicate and wasn't here to argue or upset me. She stated that she only wanted to make amends with me and didn't care if I didn't assist her in making amends with her parents. She insisted that she wanted to make amends because our last encounter had gone badly. She claimed that although she was aware that I would believe her statements were false, she sincerely wanted to make amends. Although I could hear the desperation in her voice, I was irritated rather than sorry. I informed her that I didn't want anything to do with her and that she should leave me alone. Her true colors came out once more at that point. She was quite excellent at acting regretfully, so I'm actually proud of myself for not falling for her act the first time. She freaked out as soon as I instructed her to go. She began to curse at me, claiming that although she had made a concerted effort to be courteous, she would make sure to ruin my life if I continued to act in such a manner. She even said I had better guard my back as a threat. To be honest, I thought it was funny. How would she respond? She cursed at me as I continued to walk, and then she drove away, yelling at me as she went. I told my folks about the incident when I arrived home. Everyone convened once more to decide what to do next. We were able to obtain a restraining order since she had threatened me. That was the best course of action, we all agreed. Update 3. My parents requested a restraining order against Julia a few days ago. My uncle finally contacted his folks after she was served. It had to do with money, as we suspected. They have been operating a confectionery for a few years, but it hasn't been doing well, it turns out. They realized that contacting them personally would not help their financial situation. They created this entire act for that reason. Sadly for them, Julia blew it after losing patience. Now I would be the happiest person alive if they got divorced over this. As their only son, my uncle is attempting to appease his parents by saying he had nothing to do with Julia's actions and is entitled to financial support. Julia, however, has adopted a hostile stance. She has been disparaging us online without considering the repercussions. All that does is strengthen our argument. She is obviously unstable, therefore we are certain that we will obtain the restraining order. She made it plain the other day that she doesn't want anything to do with me, so I'm not really sure why she's resisting it. Since I'm heading off to college in the autumn, it doesn't really matter. She's struggling financially, so I doubt she'll be there. I'm not worried because my parents and family will always be there for me. I tried to keep my pregnancy a secret, but my colleagues and friends started betting on who the father was and even spread harmful rumors. Original post. I'm 7 months pregnant with a child I plan on giving to a wonderful couple. Closed adoption. I made this choice because the child was the product of non-consensual sex. I didn't press charges because I was a bit of a party girl and didn't think I would be believed. I honestly have no idea who the guy was. I just remember trying to push him off and being too drunk to do so. My choice to not press charges. My choice to keep the pregnancy. My choice to adopt out. I am comfortable with these choices. They are private and personal and I'm keeping most of this to myself. My asshole friends and co-workers have turned it into a game. I was hiding the pregnancy until I started really showing a couple weeks ago. I get that people are curious about it. It's rather surprising. but I saw a betting pool being passed around the office. They are placing bets on who is the father. I was shocked and a little hurt. My friends are also curious. I have one close friend who basically knows everything. She's going to be in the room for the birth for me, and she's not telling anyone. So rumors are starting. One terrible rumor is that it's my, now former, friend Karen's husband Troy's baby. Karen called me in tears. I went over to her house to tell her to her face that it wasn't possible. She demanded to know the truth. I told her it was none of her business and she blasted me on FB. Some friends have been really nice to my face, but everything gets back to me eventually. Some people are saying that I'm a paid surrogate. I guess that one is okay. I hate that people are talking about me like this. I made one blanket statement on FB yesterday. I guess I can't hide it anymore. Yes, I am pregnant. I am giving a lovely couple the child they have tried to have for years. It's very personal and private and I ask that you all respect that. It's got a bunch of comments but I haven't read them. I'm going to take a big break from social media. I don't know what else to do or say. I am uncomfortable with everyone's constant questions. I love my job and usually my coworkers. It's my hope that I can suck it up and go back to normal in a few months. Weirdly, I've got great inner peace with everything because I am so happy to be giving the adopting parents, who are the kindest men I have ever met, a kindergarten teacher and a social worker, something they could never have on their own. Here's what I need from the readers of this sub. What can I say that isn't a lie but will shut people up without giving out information I'm not comfortable sharing? I don't like calling her, the baby is female, an accident. The two people who know the whole truth, my friend and my doctor, immediately asked me why I didn't report it. I'm ashamed and humiliated. I really don't want to say much of anything. I think a big part of why this is so hard for me and those around me is that I'm usually really talkative and social, loudmouthed. I'm in sales, so now that I'm showing, I'm also dealing with these questions from strangers too. Should I go to my manager about the pool? Laugh it off? Wait for it all to blow over? TL.dr. I need to figure out what to tell people about my unplanned pregnancy in a polite but firm way that will make them stop speculating. Update 1. Thank you so much for all the support. I'm glad I posted this. I had a good cry, took an antacid, or 4, and went to the owner, Jim. I told him the truth and I told him that I really didn't want the guys to know and I needed the jokes and talk to stop because it was hurting me. He hugged me and told me he was proud of me, which made me cry again. Fucking hormones. He gathered the staff and had a quick, what he calls come to Jesus, meeting. He announced that he would fire anyone who made me uncomfortable about my pregnancy on the spot and that all the money from the pool needed to end up on my desk, pronto. He was great. He didn't share any of my personal info, he just protected me and made it quick and easy. After we dispersed, he told me I could have an additional week paid medical. I already have 2 weeks sick vacation I haven't used. I am going to text and talk to my friend and tell her she can subtly let people know what happened, especially Karen. This baby bump is sales gold. I just landed a big commission while sitting. I still think, as great as Jim is, I need to get out of this town. I'll always be a trailer park slut to people around here. My mama died when I was really young and I acted out a lot after that. Everyone knows what I did and won't let me forget. Despite working my ass off to graduate, working my way up to sales lead, buying my home and fixing it up myself. I'm sick of Oklahoma. I'm thinking maybe somewhere in Oregon or Washington. Real pretty up there. Again, thank you for all the kind and helpful advice. I feel so much better. This has always been one of my favorite subs to lurk. Thanks. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Your friends and colleagues are assholes. Tell people simply that you are not sharing details. Keep it simple. Sounds like you do have one decent caring friend. After this was over, I would consider launching a fresh start. Given the circumstances of the pregnancy and how everybody is reacting, at least get some counseling to deal with this and maybe plot out some goals and desires of the kind of life you really want. Sorry you have had such a bad experience. OOP, I am thinking about a new start, actually. I love my field, building material sales, and can do it anywhere. I don't have any family. My house would sell for double what I owe. I've been researching towns that I've always liked. My doctor gave me a referral for a therapist, but I wasn't interested. Maybe I should give it a go. Thanks. OOP on why she chose not to reveal anything to her friends about her unplanned pregnancy. I really don't want people knowing what happened to me. Like I said in my post, the first reaction was, why didn't you report it? I hate that I didn't. I hate that some dude is out there, thinking he can do that. I hate that I used to drink so much. I hate that because I used to drink a lot and hook up a lot that people think so little of me. I just don't want everyone to know. I don't want this little girl to ever find that out. Did OOP report the situation to HR? OOP. We're a smallish outfit, we don't have HR. We have an owner-manager, who I really respect and is kind of like a second father to me. We're 7 guys and me. I've always been one of the guys about this kind of stuff. I should go to the owner and tell him what's up. I've been avoiding him. I've been avoiding everyone. I don't want to be pitied, but this shit is worse. I'm all over the place, sorry. I'm shut in my office with the worst heartburn I have ever felt, trying not to cry. OOP should consider about leaving her job. OOP. I still have to work with these guys for another couple months, 40, 50 hours a week. Maybe longer, I'm still deciding. They just got their PPs smacked by work daddy for being insensitive in a place where we regularly tease each other for everything. They did something stupid, but I still want to get along with them. Update 2. I had a few PMs asking for updates and how everything went. It's been a wild ride. I am posting this from a freezing, but spectacular, beachside hotel on the coast of Oregon. I had a job interview this morning that I feel really great about and 2 more lined up. My house sold fast and I have some money to live on and start fresh. And do I ever need a fresh start? A few days after I made that post, rumors started up again. I was pregnant with my boss's baby, some of you call that. And then it was a coworker's. And then my friend's husband again. To save face, I asked my friend to tell the right blabbermouths the truth. That backfired, hard. Someone, or some people I don't know, started posting on Craigslist about me and the baby. There's this section called rants and raves, but I guess people just post garbage there. I looked at some of the posts and someone really has it out for me. They said I was crying rape because I was too slutty to know who the father was. They called me the worst names. I flagged what I could, but new posts kept popping up. I tried to ignore it. I had a good friend write me this long-ass text about how I was making it all worse with my rape story. I was devastated. I guess my prior life and reputation are all people there will ever think of me. I kept my head down and just tried to forget it all. It was affecting my work. I put my house up for sale and made a plan to GTFO. I was at 38 weeks and had resigned my position. My wonderful boss told me I could come back, but I don't want to. I was selling most of my belongings and packing what mattered to me. There's a knock on my door, real late. Later, folks should be knocking. It was a man I kinda know from the bar scene. He was drunk and angry. He told me it was maybe his baby and I had no right to call it rape. I remember talking to him that night, but I really don't remember it being him, but I don't remember anything other than pushing him off and wishing I was stronger. I told him to go home and to leave me alone. I'm trying to be brief, but he made the next week hell for me. He was harassing me at my house every day and calling at all hours. He was threatening me and demanding a paternity test. I was terrified that he was going to mess up the adoption. I was growing more and more scared for my safety too. I couldn't sleep or eat. My friend came over and we called the police and told them everything. The officer who came to my house was great. I don't know what they said to him, but it worked and he left me alone. I went into labor the next week. I ended up getting a C-section because the baby had turned and was breech. One of her fathers ended up holding my hand. My friend was there but only one was allowed in the room. He got to cut the cord. The baby was perfectly healthy and beautiful. She had this thick dark hair and the chubbiest cheeks. Her fathers were instantly and madly in love. They took her home the next day. I had to stay a while because of the surgery. It was the hardest 3 days of my life. The hospital sent a therapist in and she was helpful. When I was released, I spent a few days in a luxury hotel with my dear friend. I never went home. I paid someone to pack my stuff for me. I spent the next 2 months at my grandmother's house in Texas, recovering and thinking and waiting for the cash from the sale of my house. I was terrified I would get a call that the man from the bar had somehow fucked up the adoption, but it hasn't come and I grew less worried. I honestly don't care who the father is. I just want the baby to have a good life. I continued to see another therapist. When I felt well enough, we packed my rig and I took off. There was a vague plan to head west and find it. I went to the Grand Canyon. I saw the Great White Sands. I spent an entire freezing day staring at the ocean in Santa Monica. I did the trip cheap, mostly sleeping in my car in cheap hotels. I spent time in every place that I found beauty. I landed here, at the prettiest place I've ever seen. I got a good rate at a motel and got an Oregon driver's license. I thought about changing my name too, but I don't want to change who I am. Just the where. Wow. This ended up being a novel. Thanks again. TL.dr, I put up with more awfulness and had the baby. She is with her family and loved. I got the fuck out of Dodge. I'm happy. Well, I'm working on being happy. I feel free. Relevant comments. OOP moving out of town, start fresh, make new social media accounts. OOP, excellent advice. I used to love Facebook. I have cousins and such that I can only really contact through it. But I disabled my account during the Craigslist nonsense and I don't miss it. I got a new phone number too and only gave it to a few people I want to hear from. I was a little worried about no social media presence and getting a new job, but I'll cross that bridge if it comes up. I have a glowing recommendation from my old job and a proven record of success. That should be enough. Everyone here has been so nice. Not Oklahoma nice, that's just nosy nice. People here are chill and kind-hearted. The manager of the hotel I'm calling home at the moment, she just gives rooms to the homeless when it's cold. Doesn't make a big deal about it either. And the kids at the coffee shop I like are all real artsy and funny. I haven't met a mean or snarky person yet. I know I'm new but it already feels like home in a way. I was shocked when my boyfriend erased my novel ideas after 3 years, our relationship on the brink of collapse. Original post. I've been working on a novel for about a year. I write every day, even just a sentence. 6 months ago my college switched to smartboards and put all their whiteboards in the garbage. I grabbed 2 because I have a huge wall space open in my living room. Most of my writing is done on my Google Drive but I have things like character personalities, names, places, a general timeline, etc. You know, stuff I want to remember. I used to take photos of it so I had my ideas with me. I used to write on my lunch break. I stopped doing that because I burn myself out and my writing quality takes a huge dive. Plus my boyfriend helps me write and it helps us connect in such a deep way. So I haven't taken a photo in about 3 months. The whiteboards are nice because I can read my notes across the room while I'm sitting in my favorite chair. I got home last night and all of my stuff was erased. It was all a train of thought. Like I'd come home and jot something down. Handwriting is way more cathartic for me. I had sketches of things in the novel. I'd basically have to go through and remember every single thing on it. I have a lot of it stored in my head or on my Google Drive but there are some things I'll never get back. But it's the fact he erased it. We don't live together. He told me I've been focusing too much on it and have no time for him. We hang out at my house 5-6 nights a week. I write while he plays video games. It's a good dynamic and I thought we enjoyed it. We are always laughing and he helps me with my wording and I Google stuff to help him in his game. This is the first time he's mentioned it bothering him. If he had brought it up, we could have talked about it, but he went nuclear and I have no idea why. I don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated. We have had one serious argument over his driving. He got better. My family took him on vacation a few weeks ago. We watch his nephew all the time. His family paid for my entire spring semester. We are so much a part of each other's lives and I feel so hurt and heartbroken. He's my muse and just the other day we went to the jewelry store to look at rings. My feelings rotate between rage, sadness, confusion, sorrow, anger. Everything. How do I even approach this? Last night I was so upset I asked him to leave. He hasn't texted, he hasn't called, he hasn't stopped by. I keep typing in questions to ask but I keep erasing them. Why did you do it? Are you unhappy with our relationship? What did I do? I'm even more heartbroken due to the fact he hasn't called or texted all day. I'm afraid to call him. I don't want to hear him say he thinks we should break up, or he doesn't want to be with me when I'm writing. Or just ignore my call. TLDR, boyfriend erased the whiteboard I use for my novel writing. He hasn't contacted me at all since it happened. I'm totally lost and heartbroken and angry. How do I possibly handle this? Top comment. 4B3ATS, holy crap. As a fellow writer, I'd be livid if I were you. This is the first time he's mentioned it bothering him. If this is true, and he jumped straight to sabotage, this is fucked up. It's messed up regardless because I'm sure your boyfriend knows how important this work is to you. Like, for him to not try to talk to you about this, after 3 years, is mind-boggling. Who does this? Text him the dreaded "we need to talk" message. Ask him when he's available, and have him come over to use his words like a goddamn adult. Also, take his key away or change your locks if you don't want to be that upfront about it. He lost his privileges. TBH though, in all sincerity, IDK if this is something I could move past. It comes off as so cruel. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he chose to go into your home when you weren't there because he knew he was doing something wrong. He either knows he fucked up, or he feels as though he's in the right, and that's why he hasn't reached out to you. I'm shocked and appalled on your behalf, OP. Relevant comments. The darkest beer, This was an unbelievably fucked up way to deal with those feelings. I hate your boyfriend right now. Remember in Little Women when Amy burns Joe's book because Joe wouldn't let her come to the theater with her? That was pretty messed up, but ultimately Amy was a child, and she would grow up and be better. Your boyfriend can't do better than the most hated March sister. He's showing you that when he doesn't get his way, he will punish you and destroy the things you care about. This isn't an isolated incident. It's an important piece of information about his character. If he comes back with a massive apology and a plan for how he's going to deal with his feelings in the future in a non-destructive way, then maybe I'd say it's worth a conversation about continuing this relationship. Oop, I actually haven't read Little Women, but I ordered it for my Kindle. It's just so out of the blue that I wonder if there's something going on with him beyond what he said. I don't know. Bubblegum cannibal. This is really fucked up. As another fellow writer, I honestly would have broken down. That's so much work just down the drain just because you wanted to get your work completed. It's ridiculous. Honestly, if it were me, I'd have to fistfight the guy after I've stopped crying over destroyed work. Going with what 4B3 it said, definitely take his key away. There's no doghouse or, you can get this back when you earn it back about it. I've personally been in this situation where I've had my old novella notebooks used in a grill fire and with truth, I've never accepted the apologies. The person isn't even a friend to me anymore. Not saying you should dump him or break ties with him in general, oh not at all. However, I do say there should be a conversation about the relationship here somewhere. If he can't handle you being immersed in something you've put years into, something you love, he's not ready to date any type of creator. To be quite honest, it's scary that he honestly thought that destroying anything that looked remotely important was the best thing to do in the situation. But when you regain yourself, try and retrace your steps now that he's hiding from you. Try and rebalance your world building, some new things might even come out of it. Keep your head up, friend, and hopefully you can pull back some information and crawl back from there. It'll be difficult, but you can do it. OOP, he stood there and he seemed so, I don't know. Proud, happy, vindicated. I've had my jaw dropped once before in my entire life, to the ventriloquist girl who was on America's Got Talent LOL, I didn't know it was an actual feeling of shock awe. It did last night right before I blanked out and woke up face down on my bed asking him to leave. OOP edited the post edit. Holy cuss you guys. I am absolutely overwhelmed. I'm not even sure what to say. I asked a girlfriend if I could come over and talk, so we are getting some wine and a pizza. Update. It's been about 3 months since I made my post. This somehow seems like it got really long. The night I made my post I went to a friend's house and she ordered a pizza, we got ice cream, and a bottle of wine. She's a straight shooter, takes a neutral approach, and she gives solid relationship advice, so I felt comfortable talking to her about everything. She couldn't figure out why he'd done it. We went over how he and I hung out, how much he seemed to care about me, how we looked into each other's eyes. But it also revealed a lot of hesitation on my part. I'm a positive person and tend to forgive faults, or overlook them. I suspect it's some sort of coping method from my childhood. We had some unresolved issues I think he was holding in, but when I'd bring them up he'd just get kind of salty and go, "It's fine, I don't care anymore." But he'd bring them up in arguments. I didn't realize how toxic it was. That same night I told him I was coming over the next day to talk about things. I told him I'd be over around 11 and the only thing he texted me was okay, which I didn't respond to. I went over to his house at 11 and he was still asleep. He got upset when I woke him up. It took the wind out of my sails. On a good day I cry if something upsets me, but I was so angry and heartbroken I couldn't even think. I left without saying a word to him. He didn't follow me. On my way out I went to the kitchen and took my house key from his keyring. I drove home in a daze, collected all his things, put them in a box on my porch, and texted him to come get them. He said, "What the hell? That's fine, I'll come by later and pick them up." I went out with a few girlfriends. We got drunk and had some amazing food. It made me feel better, but when I got home and his things were gone, I was heartbroken. I never texted him. He never texted me. I got absolutely no closure, and even though people say closure is bullshit, I've had the hardest time moving on. It's been 3 months and I still cry in the shower sometimes. Even though I broke up with him, I still feel so confused and heartbroken. I never figured out why he did what he did, I likely never will, and I miss his help and companionship. I'd love to come here and say I finished my book. But I haven't written much since. I can't get into my character's head anymore. There's a feeling of loneliness and grief, and that sort of helped me create a better outline. But I can't write about my characters. The other day I went to the bookstore to study. I ended up looking at books related to time travel and found one that has thousands of positive reviews. My novel is science fiction and I've been trying to think of how to incorporate time travel. So it kind of lined up perfectly. It turns out a lot of my ideas mirror theoretical physics. It's eerie. I've never taken physics or read about it. Suddenly string theory makes sense. Cosmology makes sense. I'm blown away and it makes me feel so weird that so much of my plot has been studied so in depth. The book has lit a fire under me. Reading more about everything makes me so excited and it's helped me really flesh out my plot. I can't put it down and read 20 or so pages a night. I haven't actually made time to sit and read a book for years. I always have a notebook with me now so I write my ideas down. I haven't written about my characters yet, but my passion is back. My plot is making more sense. Now I don't care much about how we broke up, I'm not confused. I sometimes get sad at night or during the day, or if I go out and make prolonged eye contact with a guy. I haven't thought about dating and I'm still too hurt to pursue it. But every day I move on a little bit more. I wanted to thank everyone who gave me advice. I forgot about my post until just now, and when I went back through the read it, it made me realize how seriously messed up it was. And it gave me closure. Thank you. TLDR. My ex-boyfriend erased my ideas for a book. I broke up with him and haven't heard from him at all, and had trouble finding closure. I had trouble writing for the last few months, but recently got that fire back in my belly. It took some time but I found myself again. My parents chose my sister's baby shower over my wedding. Am I the asshole for walking away and cutting ties? I, 35M, never imagined that I would be sharing my innermost thoughts on Reddit, yet here I am, lost, and turning to strangers for online guidance. Please be patient with me while I attempt to sort out the chaos that has become my family life. It's a lengthy and intricate narrative. I was raised in what I always assumed was a standard suburban American middle-class family. For the first 10 years of our life, my sister, 32F, who is 3 years younger than I am, and I were inseparable. We truly enjoyed each other's company, and our parents encouraged us to be close. For hours, we would construct intricate Lego towns, invent our own coded languages, and defend our backyard fort against fictitious intruders. We laughed a lot, shared secrets, and formed a friendship that I believed would last a lifetime during those formative years. However, things started to alter as we approached adolescence. It was mild at first, so subtle that I was unaware of it. My sister began displaying a new fiercely competitive side, not only for me but also for our parents' approval. I can recall when I first became aware of it. I had just joined the junior varsity baseball team at the age of 14. My parents were preparing a small celebratory supper, and I was ecstatic. My sister unexpectedly revealed that she had been selected to represent her class in a city-wide art competition the morning of the dinner. My celebration quickly became a shared occasion, with the majority of the attention being on her rare opportunity. These attacks increased in frequency and sophistication over time. Whenever our dad had a pastime that month, she would suddenly get interested in it. She would be honing her swing every day if he started playing golf. My sister became an avid reader and was always eager to discuss the newest book when Mom started a book club. I attempted to dismiss it as typical sibling rivalry, but it was more than that. She would force our parents to make a decision by scheduling significant occasions on the same days as my activities. For example, Mom thoughtfully planned a family movie night for my high school graduation celebration. Or she arranged a charity bake sale on the day of my state championship baseball game. This behavior was not entirely unknown to our parents. She always had an excuse ready when they called her out on it. I didn't realize, or it just worked out that way, she would explain with a completely innocent look. With one parent attending each function, they would typically wind up splitting their attention. When they had to make these decisions, I could see the remorse in their eyes, but it didn't alter the reality that they were being controlled. The competition continued as we grew older. It simply changed. My sister seemed to spend her entire life conforming to our parents' expectations, while I followed my passion for technology and developed a career in the field. Despite being accepted to her desired school, she decided to attend the college they recommended. She gave up her personal hobbies to pursue the career they were always discussing. Instead of dating the creative types she used to be attracted to, she even dated the kinds of men they liked. Please understand that I adore my parents. Even when I took a different route than they had in mind, they have always been there for me. They celebrated my promotions, assisted me in moving into my first apartment, and were always ready to offer guidance. But when it came to my sister, there was always this undercurrent of approbation. Although they would never express it directly, they were clearly proud of the decisions she made. Their excitement when she called with news was evident, as did the way they would boast about her to their acquaintances. A few years back, while we were both at home for the holidays, I made an attempt to discuss it with my sister. I questioned her about if she was actually content with the decisions she was making and whether this was the life she had always desired. I was shivered by her response. "You don't get it, do you?" With a smile that stopped short of her eyes, she said, "You win like this. You get what you want when you give them what they want. I suppose you've never been excellent at the game, but it's not difficult." I was plagued by that conversation for years. It helped me comprehend that my sister, with whom I had constructed forts and developed coded languages, was no longer with me. Someone I hardly recognized took her place, someone who viewed our familial ties as a contest to be won. Let's fast forward to the present. I've been dating my girlfriend for 5 years, and we are recently engaged, 33F. We became inseparable after meeting at a computer convention and connecting over our love of obscure sci-fi series. She is intelligent, compassionate, and has supported me through all of the family strife. We've developed a life together, and last year I made the proposal. I was so happy that I couldn't wait to tell my relatives about it. My parents' response was, at best, ambivalent when I phoned them first. Naturally, they applauded me, but their enthusiasm was noticeably lacking. The first thing my mother asked was, "Have you told your sister yet?" It hurt, but I dismissed it, blaming the surprise for their muted response. My sister, who had been employed overseas by a big corporation, reported that she had been married in a small ceremony abroad around the same time. We were unable to go because of travel restrictions and the pandemic. I could see the guilt gnawing at our parents, who were horrified that they had missed it. They spoke about how they could make it up to her and planned a late celebration over the course of several hours of video conversations. My sister then revealed yet another shocking fact a few months ago. She was expecting a child and would be returning to the United States for a prolonged stay. For 6 months, she and her husband, 34M, would be living with our parents, working from home, and getting ready for the baby. I was initially pleased for her. She is still my sister despite our complex relationship, and it was exhilarating to consider becoming an uncle. In an attempt to connect with my prospective niece or nephew, I even began to look at onesies with geeky messages. Then, however, things began to deteriorate. My parents appeared disinterested and preoccupied when I attempted to include them in the wedding planning process. The topic of my sister's pregnancy or her impending visit somehow came up in every conversation. They would wind up talking about how they were redoing the guest room for my sister's stay when I called to ask their opinion about venues. They had missed her wedding, after all, so I tried to be empathetic, but it was annoying. I recall one extremely depressing event. Finally, I had located the ideal location for the wedding, a stunning lakefront resort that my fiancé and I adored. My mom and I were on the phone when I enthusiastically described the location and asked if she and Dad would want to join us for a visit. What did she say? "That sounds lovely, honey, but we have a lot going on that weekend. We promised to be there via video call for your sister's first ultrasound." You get it, don't you? Though not in the sense she intended, I did comprehend. I realized that, once more, my sister's life was becoming more important than mine. I realized that even if she was on the other side of the globe, she could still ruin my moments. Last week was the real hit. The day of my wedding coincided with my sister's announcement that she was throwing a baby shower. She gave me the naive expression I was all too familiar with when I confronted her about it. She remarked, her voice brimming with fictitious worry, "Oh, I didn't realize that was your wedding date. However, it's the only day that works for everyone, and I'll be returning to my country shortly after. I take it you can adjust the date. You haven't even sent out invitations yet." However, invitations had been sent out. We had paid many non-refundable deposits, reserved the space, and engaged caterers. Not only was it inconvenient to change the date, but it was now all but impossible. I was enraged. This was my wedding day, the day my fiancé and I had been fantasizing about and planning for months, not just some high school function that she could ruin. I summoned a family meeting right away to resolve this. From the beginning, the family meeting was a complete failure. The tension was evident when we assembled in our parents' living room. Sitting next to me, my fiancé placed a comforting hand on my knee. Our parents occupied the armchairs, appearing uneasy, while my sister and her spouse occupied the opposite couch. I began by outlining the significance of this day for my fiancé and me, how we had been preparing for months, and how upset we were that my sister had chosen the same day for her baby shower. I outlined every realistic reason why we couldn't alter the date, including the out-of-town guests who had already booked their trips, the deposits, and the invites. My sister's countenance changed as I was speaking. The phony innocence had vanished, and in its stead came a calculating expression that I was all too familiar with. She began her counter-argument as soon as I was done. Her voice trembled a little as she started, "I understand you're upset," a performance I had seen many times before. However, you must comprehend my stance. Being abroad has caused me to miss a great deal of family time. Before the baby is born, this may be my only opportunity to rejoice with everyone. Furthermore, a baby is a far bigger event than a wedding, let's face it. Another wedding is always an option, but this is my first child. Her audacity surprised me into silence. I could feel my fiancée shaking with rage next to me as she squeezed my hand. My sister went on, addressing our parents. You missed my wedding, Mom and Dad. Will you also be absent at my baby shower? Particularly since it might be your only opportunity to join me in celebrating before the baby is born. I turned to my parents in the vain hope that they would see her deceit. However, as soon as I saw their faces, I knew they would support her once more. My father was the first to speak, his tone tentative. We understand the significance of your wedding, son, but your sister raises some valid arguments. We don't know when we'll all be together again because she's leaving soon. Are you unable to reschedule? Or perhaps we could arrive a little later for your wedding. What I was hearing was unbelievable. My own parents were requesting that I either reschedule my wedding or come to terms with the fact that they would be late for one of the most significant occasions in my life. It was impossible to describe the anger and hurt I was experiencing at the time. We're not trying to choose sides, honey. My mother interjected in a pleading tone. Both of you are equally loved by us. However, this also pertains to your niece or nephew. Do you not want us to be present when the baby is born? The final straw was that. Anger, hurt, and fury that had been bottled up for years finally burst out. Equally? My voice trembled as I spoke. You love us just as much? Isn't that a joke? You've never treated us fairly before. When did you ever prioritize my needs and feelings? With trembling hands I got up. That's it then. You continue to choose her despite everything that has happened over the years. All right, make your decision. But be aware that you won't be involved in my life after my wedding if you don't go. I'm finished. I'm done vying for your affection and attention. I've had enough of being the son you only consider while she's not there. There was silence in the room. A look of horror replaced my sister's smug smirk. As though they couldn't believe I was challenging them, my parents sat there with their mouths open. I'm getting married in 2 months, I added, sounding more composed. Until then, you must choose between supporting your son on the most significant day of his life and going to another event that your daughter has planned to control you. Make an informed choice because it will impact our connection for the rest of our life. I ignored their calls and stormed out after that. My fiancée trailed behind, her expression a mixture of pride and surprise. She hugged me while I sobbed when we got home. All those years of feeling inferior and seeing my sister take advantage of our parents came tumbling down. A week later, I'm still steadfast in my choice. I've made it plain to my parents that their decision will have long-term repercussions and my wedding is in 2 months. They have been phoning and texting me, alternating between begging and guilt-tripping, but I refuse to back down. Although she believes I should keep the possibility of reunion open, my fiancé supports me. While some people believe I'm exaggerating, others believe it's time for me to advocate for myself. My need for self-respect and my affection for my family are at odds. Am I the jerk for giving my parents this ultimatum, Reddit? Is this the proper thing to do or am I overreacting? From here, how do I proceed? I feel as though I'm at a crossroads and that I will lose something important whichever route I go. However, I also feel like I'm defending myself and my future family for the first time in a long time. Any guidance or viewpoint would be much valued. Update 1. After a hectic few weeks since my previous article, I thought I should give you all an update. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who left a comment on my initial post. Throughout this trying period, your guidance and support have been priceless. What has transpired since then is as follows. Last Saturday, my fiancé and I tied the knot. In the company of friends who have become our chosen family, it was a lovely ceremony full of love. However, if I claimed it was flawless, I would be lying. What should have been the best day of my life was clouded by the absence of my sister and dad. My parents persisted in their emotional manipulation and guilt-tripping tactics in the weeks before the wedding. They texted, left voicemails, and even unexpectedly showed up at our flat. They consistently sent the same message. How could you harm the family in this way? Why are you acting so self-centeredly? Do you not realize how much your sister is suffering as a result of this? It was difficult, but I held my ground. There were times when I nearly gave in because I couldn't handle the thought of maybe losing my family forever. Despite everything, my fiancée, who is now my wife, was my pillar of support. She reminded me of the purpose of our actions and the significance of defending our future and ourselves. My mother sent me one last message the day before the wedding. Asterisk. "We love you, son, but we are unable to support this decision," it said. "We'll be at the baby shower for your sister. We're hoping you'll understand and pardon us one day. I would like to state that I was ready for this result and that I accepted it. However, the reality struck me like a ton of bricks. In our hotel room, I sobbed as a wave of hurt, rage, and intense, excruciating despair passed over me. As I sobbed, my wife comforted me by telling me that we were now beginning our own family. One based on love and respect for one another. The actual wedding was stunning. Where my family should have been, our friends filled the void and rallied around us. I was moved to tears when my closest friend's father even offered to walk me down the aisle. I knew I had made the right decision when I looked into my wife's eyes and spoke my vows. I picked this family because I earned their affection. We are currently in Bali for our honeymoon. With its immaculate beaches and verdant surroundings, this place is a heaven. I would be dishonest if I claimed that the family conflict wasn't interfering with our trip, even though it should be the most restful period of our lives. My sister sent me a long text message yesterday when we were relaxing by the pool. For the remainder of our honeymoon, I was inclined to ignore it and keep acting as though my family didn't exist. However, my curiosity overcame me. Something else was the message. Here's the main idea. Asterisk. I hope you're content right now. Mom and Dad are inconsolable. They were so sad about missing your wedding that they hardly enjoyed my baby shower. What made you so self-centered? Everything has been damaged by you. Simply because you couldn't stand not being the center of attention for once, you've ripped this family apart. Although I've always known you were envious of me, I never imagined you would go to such lengths. When the baby is born, don't bother to come see it. You are not my uncle. I read the message 3 times, twice, and once. I had a range of emotions every time, including rage at her foolishness, hurt at her harsh remarks, and a perverse sense of triumph that she had finally abandoned her naive behavior and revealed her true nature. When my wife saw how upset I was, she inquired as to what was wrong. She reacted with a mixture of disbelief and rage when I showed her the note. She wanted to answer, to finally put my sister in her place. However, I changed my mind. I chose to ban my sister's number instead. Even though it was a modest gesture, it felt like I was getting back some of my mental tranquility. My relationship with my family has been reevaluated as a result of this entire circumstance. I've spent years attempting to gain their acceptance and to be seen as equal to my sister. However, I'm beginning to realize how poisonous that dynamic was. The rules were rigged from the beginning, so I would never win that game. It hurts, don't get me wrong. A part of me still adores my parents and longs for the close-knit family dynamic. Though I'm sorry that I might never meet them, I can't help but think about my future niece or nephew. However, I know I've made the proper decision when I think back on all the years of manipulation and constantly feeling inferior. My spouse and I have been discussing family a lot, including what it means to us and how we wish to define it. We've made the decision to raise our kids in the kind, encouraging atmosphere I always wanted as a child. We will not put children against one another, but rather appreciate their individuality. We'll be there for both the major and minor events. I'm not sure what the future holds for my sister and parents. Reconciliation is something I want to keep open, but only if there are significant, genuine improvements. Pretending everything is fine while ignoring the fundamental problems is not something I can return to. They would have to own their wrongdoing, accept accountability, and demonstrate a sincere wish to improve. To be honest, I don't think they can do that. Right now, my wife and the life we're creating together are my new family. We're discussing establishing our own holiday customs and fostering a loving, respectful environment at home. It feels appropriate, but it's also a little frightening. I would say this to anyone who could be in a similar circumstance and unsure about whether to confront toxic family members. It's difficult, but it's worthwhile. Your happiness, your self-respect, and your peace of mind are all valuable. Even if they are relatives, don't give them up for individuals who don't genuinely appreciate you. For the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful, even though I have no idea what the future contains. More valuable than any familial approval is the life I'm creating on my own terms with a spouse who values and supports me. Again, I want to thank Reddit for all of your help and guidance. You don't realize how much it means. I'm going to concentrate on enjoying my honeymoon and looking forward to the future for the time being, but I'll provide another update if anything noteworthy happens. Update 2. Since my last update, which was approximately 3 months ago, a lot has transpired. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their ongoing guidance and support. During this trying time, your words have given me strength. Approximately 2.5 months ago, my wife and I returned from our honeymoon. It was more difficult than we thought to return to real life. It was simple to turn my family's presence out of my mind when we were abroad. However, everything came flooding back when we were at home and surrounded by mementos of our lives before the wedding turmoil. My family made their first attempt to get in touch with me around 2 weeks after we returned. My dad texted me, saying, "We miss you, son. Can we have a conversation?" My wife and I debated how to react for hours after I showed her the note. There was a part of me that wanted to ignore it and stick to our no-contact rule. But there was another side that longed for reconciliation, a part I believed I had buried. We ultimately chose to react, albeit tentatively. Halfway between our houses, we decided to meet at a calm cafe as a neutral venue. Despite my wife's offer to accompany me, I chose to attend this initial meeting by myself. Without any protection, I had to confront my parents. I was quite nervous on the day of the meeting. My folks were already seated at a corner table when I entered the cafe. In other ways, they appeared older and more worn out. My dad's shoulders were hunched, and my mom's eyes had crimson rims. We slipped into an uneasy silence as I sat down. My mother was the first to speak. When she continued, "We've missed you so much," her voice broke. We know we made a terrible mistake. "We've had a lot of time to think about our actions, son," my dad said, nodding. "We now understand how unjust we have been to you for years, not only during the wedding." As they opened their hearts to me, I listened. They discussed how they had always found it difficult to divide their attention between my sister and me and how they had gotten caught up in the habit of overcompensating for her demanding personality. They acknowledged that they had been oblivious to her tactics and had consistently justified her actions. My father remarked, "We believed we were being fair. However, we now realize that we were anything but. We caused you great pain by allowing your sister to control the dynamics of our household. We sincerely apologize, son." Although I was grateful for their apologies, a few words cannot erase years of suffering and animosity. I answered, "I hear you," in a firm voice. "And thank you for apologizing, but I must make it clear to you that there is no quick fix for this. One of the most significant days of my life was missed by you. As you have done for years, you put my sister's desires ahead of your own. I can't simply forget about that." They gave a sympathetic but painful nod. We spoke for hours. In an attempt to better understand their own behavior and how it had impacted our family dynamics, they told me they had been attending a family therapist. They discussed what they had learned about their parenting approach and how it had fueled my sister and my rivalry. They acknowledged that things hadn't gone as planned at my sister's baby shower. She had apparently complained about my ruining her special day by getting married on the same day for the majority of the ceremony. They had been aware of her tendency toward selfishness as a result of her actions. "We've started setting boundaries with her," my father wrote. "She's not handling it well, and it's not easy. However, we now acknowledge that we have tolerated her behavior for far too long." By the end of our meeting, I felt as though healing was conceivable, though not quite. I committed to keeping in contact with them and making modest efforts to mend our connection. We agreed that my wife would be involved in our conversations and scheduled monthly dinners and weekly phone talks. Regarding my sister, she sent me an email a week following our meeting with our parents. This was the subject line, "I apologize." To put it mildly, I was dubious. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear anything she had to say after her harsh texts on our honeymoon. However, my curiosity overcame me and I clicked on the email. It was unexpected. She wrote, "Brother, I have a significant apology to make to you. For years, I have been egotistical, cunning, and plain mean to you. I constantly reminded myself that I was only playing the game and doing what I had to do to advance. However, I now realize that I was simply acting like a bad sister and a horrible person overall. To be honest, I've always envied you. You've always exuded confidence and competence. While I molded myself into what I believed our parents wanted, you followed your passions and created the life you enjoy. I was angry with you because you were free to be who you were and yet be appreciated. I am aware that this does not justify my actions. There is no justification for the way I have treated you, particularly during your wedding. I gravely damaged you by allowing my hatred and jealousy to impair my judgment. I'm currently attempting to resolve my problems in treatment. I'm coming to accept accountability for my deeds and to cease attributing my own failures to other people. I don't think I deserve forgiveness, so I don't expect it. However, I wanted to express my sincere apologies for everything. I hope that one day we will be able to resume our relationship, this time one that is based on respect for one another and true love. Best wishes on your nuptials. I hope the two of you are content with each other. Your sister." I tried to process my emotions by reading the email multiple times. I hadn't heard anything that sincere from my sister in a long time. My wife and I spoke about it for a long time after I showed her. I ultimately made the decision to reply, however succinctly. I told her that I valued her honesty and thanked her for apologizing. I clarified that although I'm not yet ready for a relationship, I'm happy she's seeking support and improving herself. Although I made it apparent that it would take time and be on my terms, I kept the door open for future communication. That's the current situation. I'm repairing my relationship with my parents in a cautious manner. My sister and I are currently in a holding pattern, however we may eventually get back together. Together, my wife and I are stronger than ever as we navigate these turbulent familial waters. I'm not gullible enough to believe that everything has been resolved. We have a long journey ahead of us, filled with challenging discussions and emotional obstacles. However, I feel optimistic about my family ties for the first time in a long time. I want to share this with those of you in similar circumstances. Advocating for oneself can result in positive change, but it can also be difficult. Setting limits, demanding respect, and putting your own health first are all acceptable. Additionally, if sincere attempts are made to resolve the problems, it's acceptable to remain receptive to reconciliation. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support along this trip. Your words of wisdom and kindness have been priceless. Because of this group, I feel more prepared to face the future, even if I have no idea what it will bring. My dad wants me to apologize to his girlfriend's children for calling out their racist comments about my race. Original post. Bear with me, I'll try my very best to keep this as short as possible. My parents split when I was 23 and my sister was 20. They were such a poor match and I'm surprised they lasted so long, and both of us breathed a bit of a sigh of relief when they split. Everyone was immediately happier, and since then both of our parents have found new partners. I've always had a good relationship with my dad, albeit a bit of a strained one. My dad is a fair bit less politically correct than I am, and I'm hardly PC at all, trust me. He calls things that are stupid or that he doesn't like gay. He uses the word fag to describe gay people, thinks Hillary Clinton would be a bad president because she'd nuke everyone on her period, and laments that he can't use the N-word in public. He's the epitome of out-of-touch late 50s lily white guy, is what I'm saying. I love my dad, and while these things bother me, there's literally no changing him, so I have to just bear it when I'm hanging out with him. And an important note is that while my dad says some sexist, homophobic shit, he never does so in public. At the very least, he knows when to keep his opinions to himself and his family. Recently, my dad's been seeing this woman, let's call her Iris. Iris has 2 kids as well, 29M and 27F. I don't really know Iris very well. I met her earlier this year at my dad's place but only very briefly as I was dropping off a few things with my dad. My sister's never met her before, and neither of us has met her kids before. My dad really likes this woman, so he wants all of us, both sets of kids, to get to know each other and the parents so we can all be a blended family. Despite my dad's political incorrectness, he can be adorable sometimes. So dad invited us all out to dinner. My sister's known to be a bit bristly with strangers, so I told her to be on her best behavior, because I want our dad to be happy and I didn't want to offend Iris or her kids. So we sit down and all start trying to get to know each other. My dad chose a Mexican restaurant to take us out to, because it's our whole family's favorite type of restaurant. My mom is Mexican, and growing up we had the most bomb-ass authentic Mexican food all the time. Since my mom and dad split, my dad has been trying to fill the hole my mom's great cooking left in his belly, so to speak, and is a taqueria junkie. Also important to note, me and my sister, despite being half Mexican, have really white skin. We have obviously Mexican features, or at least I think they're obviously Mexican, but everyone always assumes we are of white European descent because of the color of our skin. So we sit down with Iris and her kids, and immediately her kids start complaining. These are grown-ass adults complaining that half of the menu is in Spanish. Next to each thing on the menu was the Spanish name and the English name, and all the descriptions were in English, so it wasn't like an English speaker couldn't read it. I am near fluent in Spanish, and my sister speaks passably, and we're both in school to become English second language teachers, but we tried to settle the hair on the backs of our necks and ignore them. We actually managed to have a pleasant convo with them otherwise, until the waiter comes over to get our drink orders. Iris's son snapped at the waiter like a dog to get his attention and take his order first, and her daughter spoke in a highly condescending voice, very slowly, like this man working at a restaurant that caters to big fat white people couldn't understand damn English. Iris was normal, thank God, but when the waiter, bless his jolly soul, he was so kind despite being treated like an idiot by those two, left, her son remarked that he didn't expect the service to be very good. I don't even know if he could understand us. My dad has been to this place before, so he said, no, the service here is great, you're going to love this food, I recommend. I can't remember what exactly he recommended. Trying to smooth things over. And then the son says, not like I could understand him either with that god-awful accent. These people need to learn English if they want to come to America. Probably illegal or some shit. Me and my sister are generally nice, kind people, but no one has ever accused us of being patient or suffering fools silently. So because we're petty, we just gave each other a look and started speaking only in Spanish to one another for the rest of the night. I felt bad, because Iris looked mortified, but it felt so good to be so petty for the next hour or so through dinner. We of course switched to English to talk to Iris or her kids, but with each other and my dad, who can understand it but not speak it, we spoke the most rapid fluent Spanish we could muster. And at every opportunity my sister would try to mention that we were Mexicans and had grown up in a Hispanic household with our mom and her extended family. Since then, my dad's been texting and calling us. Mostly me because I'm usually the ringleader of these sorts of things, begging for us to apologize to Iris's kids for embarrassing them. For embarrassing them. I'm sure my dad didn't know they were going to be so racist towards Mexicans, or else I'm sure he wouldn't have invited them to go out for Mexican food, but I know he doesn't even think what they said was that racist. He's said that they could have been worse, and there was no need for you to humiliate them and Iris like that. I agree, Iris was lovely. I should have taken her feelings into account, and I have no problem calling or meeting her to apologize for acting so petty and childish, but damn it, I do not want to apologize to racists for pointing out and not taking their racism sitting down. Is that so wrong? What should I do? Am I just being petty about this too? I don't want to make my dad unhappy, but I know he's not a good judge of what is and isn't racism. And I don't feel like I should apologize for slapping a couple of racist adult brats down. TLDR, Dad's new girlfriend's kids were racist against Mexicans, didn't know sister and I are half Mexican. Sister and I spoke nothing but Spanish to each other for the night to embarrass them. Dad now wants us, me, to apologize to them for embarrassing them. What do you do? Top comments. Brown is not freed. Ha ha ha, nice and don't apologize. Deleted. He's said that they could have been worse. Yeah, well, so could you. They're lucky you went with the indirect reminder that they have no idea who might be listening to or offended by their bigotry, rather than calling them out for everyone in the restaurant to hear. Tell Dad and Iris that you realize her children's ignorance doesn't reflect on her, but they should feel embarrassed over what they did, and you think it's best to avoid future family dinners until they understand where they went wrong and apologize to you. Deleted. Apologize. In Spanish. Update. So I thought I'd come back to update y'all. My sister and I talked about it with our mom, who has always been much calmer than us. She laughed at us speaking nothing but Spanish, and said she wished she'd been there to see Iris's kids' faces. She did tell us to just apologize though, because she knows how our dad can hold grudges over tiny things like this. We didn't really want to do that though. So I contacted Iris and asked if she and I could meet up for coffee and talk about everything that happened. She was super apologetic when we met for coffee and said a lot of her kids' funny ideas come from their bio dad, who is a patriotic Republican. The way she kind of sugar-coated everything about it makes me think maybe she doesn't necessarily think what they did was wrong in general, just that she was sorry my sister and I happened to be part Mexican and that what they did offended us. Anyway, it was just me and Iris at a Starbucks. My sister wasn't there. She's grown incredibly apathetic to the incident in a very short amount of time, that's just the way she is. And I said I understand everyone's entitled to their opinion, that my dad has some opinions I don't agree with at all too, but that it was rude of them to assume we'd be okay being subjected to their racist remarks and was embarrassing to be seen with racists. Iris was pretty flustered at the term racists, but I didn't back down. Anyway, she was at least reasonable, and apologized again about what happened, and I apologized that we embarrassed her at dinner, and besides some slightly irreversibly ruffled feathers, I think I've at least smoothed things over with her. My dad is another story. He is stubbornly not talking to me until I apologize to his girlfriend's kids. I made my stance clear, that I wouldn't, and if he wanted to act like racism against his kids was okay, then I wouldn't be hanging around him anymore, or God forbid bringing my future mixed kids and his future grandkids around. My sister just sent him a text that said, "Have fun with the racists." She's not good at subtlety. Anyway, that's where things are right now. Not a super good ending, but not necessarily a bad ending either. TLDR. Iris apologized for her racist kids without really acknowledging their racism, Dad being a stubborn fool. I was sidelined by my family's favoritism toward my adopted sister until her shocking true identity was revealed at my birthday party. Family trouble has plagued me, 35F, for as long as I can remember, but recent events have now gotten to the breaking point. I feel like I'm drowning in hurt, uncertainty and hatred right now, so I'm hoping anyone who has experienced a similar circumstance may offer some guidance or insight. To put things in perspective, my adopted sister, 34F, is just 1 year younger than myself. She was adopted by our parents when she was a newborn, and I have spent my entire childhood with her. That would seem to bring us together, like a couple, but the truth is far from that romantic notion. It was evident from my very first recollections that our parents gave preference to my sister. They lavished her with attention, gave her everything she desired, and appeared to listen intently to everything she said. When I proudly showed my mother a sketch I had done when I was 5 years old, she dismissed me since my sister was reciting the alphabet for the 100th time. Although it might not seem like much, it was a sign of a pattern that would shape our family's dynamics for many years to come. The distance between us just got wider as we got older. My sister had trouble reading in elementary school, and our parents worked with her for hours every night. Even though I did exceptionally well in school, I seldom ever got more than a passing good job on my report cards. My sister had a dance recital in middle school, so my parents were not there at the award ceremony when I won the scientific fair. That was always the case. Her wants, accomplishments, and hardships all came before mine. I don't want to imply that I was abused or neglected in the conventional sense. Our fundamental necessities were always satisfied, including having a roof over our heads and food on the table. However, the emotional neglect was genuine and extremely distressing. Early on, I discovered that being flawless, achieving, excelling, was the only way to garner any attention in our home. So I did just that. With an almost obsessive zeal, I immersed myself into my studies. In high school, I was cooped up in my room preparing for AP exams and filling out my college applications while my sister was out at parties and hanging out with friends. It was worthwhile. I received a half scholarship to a prestigious university. This will finally make my parents proud, I thought. However, instead of applauding my accomplishment on the day I departed for college, they fussed more about how my sister would handle my absence. College was enlightening. I was evaluated entirely on my own merits, not in relation to my sister, for the first time in my life. I made true friends who appreciated me for who I was, and I flourished both socially and academically. I obtained a position at a prominent company after graduating with honors. With unwavering resolve, I ascended the corporate ladder during the ensuing 10 years. My inner voice, which still yearned for my parents' praise, propelled me to every advancement and accomplishment. I'm pleased of what I've accomplished and currently work for a Fortune 500 firm in a senior management role. However, that pride is constantly laced with resentment because my family never seems to be satisfied with whatever I achieve. In contrast, my sister has never truly settled into a profession and has alternated between jobs. She still resides with our parents, who provide her with both emotional and financial support. My parents may have been pleased by my accomplishment, but it appears that it has just strengthened their partiality for my sister. They constantly offer justifications for her lack of focus, such as, she's just trying to find her passion. Or not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder to be happy. At the same time, if my achievements are recognized at all, they are frequently greeted with a lackluster congrat. Our family relationships have been damaged in every way because of this dynamic. Family get-togethers are a minefield of barely veiled bitterness and passive-aggressive remarks. I've made an effort to discuss my feelings with my parents, but they consistently brush them off as envious or too sensitive. As for my sister, she seems to take great pride in her preferred position and frequently makes disparaging comments about me being married to my job, or too busy for family. I've been in therapy for years in an attempt to resolve these problems, boost my self-esteem, and establish sound boundaries. But every encounter with my family seems to set me back, regardless of how much progress I made. I've thought of severing all connections, but it would be devastating to lose my family, dysfunctional as they are. This leads me to last week's events, which have caused me to reevaluate every aspect of my relationships with my family. As is customary, our parents threw my sister a lavish birthday celebration. Friends, extended family, and even some of her former classmates were invited. With catered food, an open bar, and even a live band, the house was decorated as though it were a wedding ceremony. As a comparison, last month's birthday was celebrated with a little dinner for the four of us, during which the most of the discussion focused on my sister's most recent business venture, a pet-related social media app that she believes will be the next big thing. After approximately 2 minutes, my parents' eyes drifted away as I attempted to discuss a significant project I'm overseeing at work. I made an effort to blend in at the party. I tried my best to encourage my sister on her special day by interacting with family members in a courteous manner and striking up little conversations. However, as the evening went on, I sensed the old bitterness rising within me. It wasn't just the extravagant celebration. It was also the way our parents showered her with praise, how family members inquired about her life while hardly noticing mine, and how she absorbed all the attention as if it were her natural inheritance. In an attempt to calm the anxiety attack I could see coming on, I found myself withdrawing to a corner and drinking a glass of wine. When she saw how upset I was, a cousin came to see how I was doing. With sincere concern in her voice, she inquired, "Are you okay?" For the first time that evening, someone had taken the effort to inquire about my well-being. I started to reply, but my sister's voice broke through the throng before I could. She raised her voice and tapped her glass with a spoon, saying, "Attention everyone. I'd like to make a toast." As everyone's attention was drawn to my sister, the room became quiet. She was a little shaky on her feet, and her cheeks were flushed, which indicated that she had consumed a significant amount of alcohol. As she began her address, she was still able to put on a convincing smile. Initially, it appeared to be a standard birthday greeting. She toasted our parents for their love and support, thanked everyone for attending, and conveyed her appreciation for the celebration. Her tone then shifted and I got a shiver down my back. She said, "I'm especially grateful to Mom and Dad," with a tone of voice that I had never heard before. "I've always received greater treatment from them than their own daughter. Just take a peek at this celebration. When was the last time they threw my sister a party like this?" As everyone in the room turned to stare at me, I felt my face heat up. But my sister wasn't finished. "But I guess that's because I've always been the better daughter," she added, sounding a little slurred by the champagne. "Yes, my sister has a nice career and makes a lot of money, but who do Mom and Dad truly love in the end? Who makes their life happier? It's not the icy, work-driven automaton who hardly has time for family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing and was still. With the exception of a few painful coughs and my sister's voice, which seemed to get louder by the second, the room had become eerily quiet. She said, "You know, it's funny," with a tiny wobble. Everyone constantly praised my sister's intelligence and her potential for success, but look at us now. I'm here with family and friends who genuinely care about me, while she's by herself, married to her job. I turned to our parents in the hopes that they would intervene and put an end to this vicious act. However, they only sat there, appearing uneasy and doing nothing to stop it. I had never felt more alone in my life than I did at that precise time. My sister continued to babble, criticizing every element of my life, including my appearance, the fact that I didn't have a romantic partner, and even the suggestion that I succeeded in my work by sleeping my way to the top. I felt myself getting smaller with every word, years of repressed hurt and rage threatening to blow up. My aunt, our mother's sister, stepped up just as I was about to burst into tears and thought I could take no more. She had a determined and angry expression on her face. I was standing when she approached and gave me an envelope. Her voice broke the tension in the room as she stated, "Don't open this until I'm done talking." Her eyes were flaming as she turned to face the throng. The scene that followed resembled a scene from a soap opera. According to my aunt, my sister wasn't taken from a foster home. She was her biological daughter. It seems that my aunt wasn't prepared to become a mother when she became pregnant suddenly in her early 20s. She requested my parents to adopt the child instead of ending the pregnancy. My aunt continued, "I thought I was doing the right thing," her voice trembling with passion. "I believed that my sister and her husband would provide a better life for my child. I believed she would develop into a nice, caring person who was appreciative of her life. However, instead." She turned to face my sister, who had turned completely white. "Instead, you've developed into a conceited, self-centered brat who believes it's acceptable to make fun of her sister in public. I've watched this familial dynamic unfold for years, and I can no longer keep quiet about it." Chaos broke out in the room. Screaming, my sister demanded to know whether it was true. Our parents were shooting daggers at my aunt while attempting to soothe her. Family members were pointing and muttering. And me? I felt as though the earth had vanished from beneath me as I stood there, gripping the envelope. Once more, my aunt's voice broke through the cacophony. My aunt expressed her dismay, saying, "I always thought that if my daughter was being raised by my sister, she would grow up to be a wonderful person. But obviously, I was mistaken. No good person would ever attempt to make their sister look as bad as you just did." Then, turning to face me, she instructed me to open the packet. There was a blank check inside. My aunt told me to fill in whatever amount you want. I had planned to give this to her as a birthday gift, but after seeing how she's turned out, I have no interest in rewarding that behavior. My aunt then left, leaving a startled quiet behind her. It was short-lived. In an attempt to take the check out of my hands, my sister lunged at me. She was so hysterical that our parents had to physically restrain her as she shouted and sobbed. It was more than I could handle. I fled to my room, shut the door, and sobbed. Years of suppressing my hurt and bitterness and feeling inferior came rushing out. I ignored the banging on my door and the muted arguments coming from downstairs while I sobbed for hours. A week has passed, and I'm still unsure about what to do. With the exception of needs, I have not left my room. Despite our parents' attempts to speak with me, I find it difficult to confront them. My sister has alternated between begging for forgiveness, and the check of course, and sending me angry messages. There's a part of me that wants to cash that check, go and never return. I've tried all my life to win the love and acceptance of people who don't seem to be able to give it to me. Perhaps I should give up trying. Perhaps it's time for me to prioritize myself. However, I also have a fear of losing my family. Despite their dysfunction, they are the only family I have ever known. It's terrifying to consider living without them, going on vacation by yourself, and having no one to call in case of an emergency. In addition, I'm experiencing a lot of mixed feelings regarding my sister. On the one hand, I'm upset with her for her actions during the party and for years of subtly insulting people. However, I can't help but feel a little sorry for them. It must be really upsetting to learn that you're adopted, especially in such a humiliating and public manner. Does that justify her actions? Not at all. However, it makes matters more difficult. Regarding my parents, I find it hard to comprehend how they could have watched while my sister sobbed at me. Were they simply taken aback? Or does their lack of response reveal their true feelings for me? Years of emotional neglect and favoritism, how can I even start? I feel as though I'm at a fork in the road and am unsure of which way to go. Should I make an effort to repair these damaged relationships? Can something wholesome be constructed from such a poisonous base? Or do I go on and attempt to start over, one in which I'm not always looking for unfulfilled approval? Reddit, I'm lost. I've tried my entire life to gain the love and acceptance of my family, only to be rejected and humiliated in the process. From here, how do I proceed? Should I accept that certain families cannot be repaired, or is there any chance for reconciliation? Any insight or counsel would be greatly valued. I feel as though I'm drowning in hurt and confusion, and I'm no longer sure which way is up. First update. 2 days have passed since the terrible birthday celebration, and I'm still getting over it all. My aunt came to visit me this morning. As she continued to discuss the adoption, she appeared worn out. When she became pregnant, she was young and afraid. It seemed like the ideal option for my parents, who had been trying for another child. To keep everyone safe, they decided to keep it a secret. For years, she had been accumulating money with the intention of transferring it to my sister when she was ready to be self-sufficient. She came to the realization that I was more deserving after the party. She gave me an empty check. I felt both guilty for stealing something intended for my sister and justified that someone recognized the unfair treatment. Despite my attempts to decline, my aunt persisted, claiming it was back pay for emotional labor. That evening, I decided something. I checked into a hotel across town, packed my luggage, and left my folks a note. I needed time to reflect. I ignored the calls and messages from my relatives throughout the course of the following several days. I performed some introspection, talked to my therapist, and sought advice from a financial advisor regarding the check. I sent my folks an email 5 days later. I assured them I needed time but was secure. I laid up my requirements for mending our relationship. They had to admit to the years of partiality. All of us go to family therapy. My sister apologizes in public. They start treating us equally and cease condoning her actions. They instantly responded that they were relieved and asked me to come home so we could discuss. We decided to get together at a cafe close to my hotel. It was a stressful encounter. My parents agreed to treatment and pledged to improve our ties, as if they were sorry. They expressed reluctance to publicly apologize for my sister's adoption, claiming it was traumatic. I refused to back down and insisted that she issue a public apology for her actions. With an uneasy truce we departed. Everything but the public apology was approved by my parents, who indicated they would talk to my sister about it. Over the following few days, the negotiations went on. At first, my sister sent irate messages and refused to apologize. But as I persisted, her tone started to shift. She apologized via text, saying she was unhappy and intoxicated at the party. I retorted that the apology should not only be for the party event but also for years of nasty behavior. More irate texts followed, and then there was stillness. My parents attempted to mediate the situation by offering solutions like a written statement or an apology limited to the family. I was conflicted as this went on. There was a part of me that wanted to be forceful and insist on the respect I so well earned. Another part wondered if fighting was worth it because it was so exhausting. I was reminded by my therapist that putting my health first is not selfish. Setting boundaries, she stated, is necessary for healthy relationships. I've made the decision to offer my family one final opportunity to comply with my demands. I'll use my aunt's check to start over somewhere else, away from family strife and past hurts, if they are unable to. I'm feeling both nervous and optimistic as I get ready to give this order. Whatever occurs will influence my life and relationships in the future. I'm hoping I'm making the correct decision. I will update you. I appreciate everyone's support. Knowing that I'm not fighting this battle alone is reassuring. Second update. Since my last update, which was a week ago, things have drastically changed. I've made the decision to revoke the terms I established for reconciliation, but not for the reasons you may expect. After arguing with my family for days, I came to the conclusion that their attempts at compromise were more about minimizing the harm than showing sincere regret. Increasingly manipulative, my sister's apology texts alternated between gaslighting and guilt-tripping. "You're tearing this family apart," she'd write, and then, "I don't even remember what I said at the party. Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" In the meantime, my parents persisted in trying to reach a solution that seemed to ignore the true problems rather than deal with them. They objected to the concept of admitting their part in creating this unhealthy relationship and instead proposed a private family gathering where my sister would provide an apology. I started to lose sleep, check my phone frequently, and get nervous whenever it buzzed as the pressure increased. It became evident that my mental health was suffering as a result of this negotiation. At that point, I decided to remove my conditions, not because I believe they are irrational, but rather because I now understand that meaningful change cannot be coerced or negotiated. My family just isn't there yet, and it must originate internally. I wrote my parents a quick email. "I'm rescinding my previous conditions. I need space and time to heal. Please respect my wishes and don't contact me for a while." They reacted with astounding speed. The volume of calls, texts, and voicemails on my phone surged. I had to ask security to take them out of my office once they arrived. They also reached out to a few of my pals in an attempt to persuade me to return home. "We love you, please come home. How can you do this to us? And your sister is devastated. She's not eating," were among the desperate, angry, and manipulative texts they sent. Emotional warfare has been going on nonstop. Sometimes the guilt is unbearable. Sometimes I question whether I'm exaggerating or whether I should just go home and try to forget everything. However, I also recall the years I spent feeling invisible, having my accomplishments disregarded, and seeing my sister consistently given preference. To assist me deal with the stress, I've started going to my therapist twice a week. By borrowing my family's phone numbers and configuring email filters, she has been assisting me in establishing boundaries. Although it seems drastic, it's essential for my mental health at the moment. My workplace has turned into a haven for me. To avoid returning to my empty flat, I've poured myself into tasks and stayed late at work. Some of my coworkers have expressed concern after noticing the difference in me. Even if I can't adequately describe the circumstances, I appreciate their support. I still haven't paid my aunt's check though. As a continual reminder of the decision I must make, it rests in my desk drawer. To show that I don't need their money or approval, I feel like tearing it up. Some view it as a lifeline, an opportunity to start over somewhere new. I've begun looking at employment prospects in other cities and even other nations. It is both exciting and frightening to consider a whole transformation. Was it truly possible for me to start afresh and leave everything behind? I'm taking things day by day for the time being. I'm getting better at accepting the unease that comes with uncertainty and having faith that I'll know what to do when the time comes. Certain days are more difficult than others. Sometimes I miss my family so terribly that it hurts my body. However, there are also unexpectedly peaceful moments when I notice that my breathing is easier than it has been in years. I am aware that this voyage is far from finished. There will be more emotional obstacles to conquer and more challenging choices to make. But I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. It feels right, but it's also unpleasant and uncomfortable. I appreciate all of your ongoing help and guidance. Having this place to process and share is more important than you may realize. When I have more to report, I'll provide another update. I'm concentrating on getting better and finding my identity outside of my family's shadow in the interim. Third update. 3 weeks have passed since my last report, and things have significantly worsened. When my sister unexpectedly showed up at the door last Saturday when we were visiting my aunt, we were taken aback. She stormed in, obviously drunk and furious, yelling, "You've ruined everything. You are attempting to take my life after stealing my mother." The stench of alcohol was overpowering, and her eyes were crazy. My aunt and I had to hold her back as she lunged at me. Allegations were made by my sister, who said I had always been envious and had turned everyone against her. Even after everything that had transpired, the hatred in her voice was startling. I was shocked by my aunt's response. Her normally composed manner had vanished. "You need to leave now," she said forcefully, her face hardening as she dragged my sister out of the house. My sister resumed her tirade outside, attracting neighbors' attention. "My mother is not you," I heard her shout at my aunt. "I was exposed to you. You can no longer act as though you care." A few of the neighbors threatened to contact law enforcement. My sister eventually pulled away in her automobile. My aunt was clearly shaken within. She revealed that she struggled with guilt over the adoption during our hours-long conversation. She had believed that telling the truth would fix things, but she now understood that the harm was much more extensive. "I believed I was acting appropriately," she muttered. "However, I might have just made things messy for everyone. Wide-ranging effects have resulted from the occurrence." Later, my parents called in a rage, accusing me of trying to ruin our family and inciting my aunt against my sister. I tried to explain things to them, but they refused. Members of the extended family have taken sides, causing the family to become severely divided. What started out as a private issue has turned into a full-fledged family conflict. The intensity of it all overwhelms me. I feel guilty even though I know it's not my fault, but I also want to withdraw and start over somewhere else. Because of my sister's condition, my aunt is worried about my safety and has proposed that I remain with her for a bit. I'm thinking about it, but I'm afraid it could make things worse. I'm making an effort to remain somewhat normal throughout this whole ordeal. I try to look after myself, go to work and see my therapist. However, this familial conflict is a continual burden. I wonder if this will have any repercussions. Is it possible for a family to overcome such ingrained animosity and rage? Is it better to give up or is it worth trying? I'm trying to avoid getting pulled back into the pandemonium and am concentrating on my own recovery for the time being. Even though it's difficult, I'm committed to finding a solution, whether or not my family is on board. I appreciate your unwavering support, everyone. You don't realize how much it matters. When I can, I'll provide another update, ideally with more positive news. Update 4. A month has passed since my last update, and I've made some decisions that will change my life. I came to the realization that I needed to take immediate action to safeguard my mental health and create a future for myself following the tumultuous incident with my sister at my aunt's place. I've poured myself fully into my profession, asking my supervisor if I may move to another location to work for our company or take on more responsibility. I was surprised by how supportive she was. I'm currently in the running for a senior management job that would take me across the nation. It's thrilling as well as frightening. Along with the opportunity to oversee a large project, the new position offers a substantial wage increase. To get ready for this change, I've been working 12-hour days, going to every training session I can, and networking frantically. My increased zeal has sparked curiosity among my coworkers, but I've been able to sidestep most inquiries. A few close coworkers are well aware of my predicament and have been tremendously helpful. Regarding the money part, I ultimately decided on my aunt's check. I made the decision to cash it after giving it a lot of thought and spoke with a financial advisor. I was able to reframe it as an investment in my future, one free from toxic family dynamics, with the assistance of my therapist. I've secured an apartment in my prospective city using a portion of the funds. With a view of the city skyline, it's a compact, contemporary space. I've put the remainder into a diversified portfolio. I feel autonomous and financially secure for the first time in my life. The final separation from my family has been the most difficult aspect. All of their phone numbers and email addresses have been blocked by me. I've requested that my aunt not forward any of their texts. I know it's essential for my recovery, but it's been excruciating, like cutting off a piece of myself. Of course, there are periods of uncertainty. I occasionally feel inclined to phone late at night in an attempt to make amends. However, I then recall the years of gaslighting, the ongoing sense of inferiority, and the violent altercation at my aunt's house. It makes me more determined to keep going. I recently began seeing a new therapist who focuses on estrangement and familial trauma. She has been assisting me in overcoming my sadness and guilt. To replace the family-centered customs I've left behind, we're concentrating on establishing a new network of support and developing new ones. Additionally, I've joined a support group for those who are separated from their relatives. It has been both upsetting and consoling to hear their stories. I've learned that I'm not the only one going through this and that you can have a happy life without the family you were born into. Regarding my aunt, we have kept up our friendship while setting clear limits. She doesn't try to act as a mediator and accepts my decision to break off contact with the rest of the family. Although her assistance has been priceless, I'm careful not to rely on her too much. I feel a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension about the future. Though intimidating, The idea of starting over in a new place with a demanding new job and no family safety net is also freeing. I feel for the first time that I am living my life according to my own terms, free from societal norms and familial expectations. I've begun pursuing new interests and pastimes that I never had time for while I was preoccupied with family matters. I've joined a local hiking group, I'm learning how to cook, and I'm even thinking about painting. I've not felt this at peace in years as I pack up my flat and get ready for this new phase. Yes, I am saddened by what I have lost, but I am also hopeful about the future. I'm no longer the neglected kid or the family's scapegoat. I am only me, paving my own way. I want to thank everyone for their support along this journey. You have no idea how much your words of support have meant. My last update will be this one. I should put this chapter behind me and concentrate on writing the next one. Good luck to me. A 28-year-old man is ruining my 18-year-old son's life, and I'm determined to fight back and free him from his influence. Original post. Hello and thank you in advance for your creativity and time. I'm living in hell right now and need ideas. My son just turned 18 and is disabled. He needs and takes multiple medications and needs support at school. He does well in some settings and is on track to graduate and pursue trade school, with support, and we're so proud of him. He's extremely impressionable, a little socially awkward, and desperate for friends. For years we've struggled because he gives his possessions away, gets in bad situations, someone offering to sell him rocks at a park, him thinking they are collectible polished gemstones, so he asks to see them, and then freaks out when he realizes they're drugs. And is easily bullied. He will do anything to be liked. Which breaks my heart. And we're working on it in therapy, with trusted adults, etc. The grown man. This guy is 28 years old. Let's call him Quentin. He's frequently homeless, often sleeping in a tent in parks. Or he'll get a voucher from our city to stay in a motel. He has 2 pit bulls, not spayed or neutered, that he will leave in the tent or motel room when he works at a fast food job. I actually have compassion for him and his animals, if he had nothing to do with my son. It started with him asking my son to watch his dogs in the park while he worked. My son is so thrilled to have a friend, and be helping. And he does love animals. So he will spend 8+ hours a day or night, alone in a park, watching these dogs. He would ask if he took dog food, toys, and blankets from our house for Quentin's dogs. He does it whether we say yes or no. Months ago, we would say yes because I appreciate that my son wants to help these dogs. Starting a few months ago, when my son turned 18, Quentin told him he didn't have to stay with us and could stay with him. For weeks, our son was sleeping in the tent with the dogs or rough in the park. Quentin gives him beer and weed. Our son will watch the dogs for entire shifts while he works. Quentin tells him he will help him get a tent and vouchers too. The police are sympathetic, especially because my son has disabilities and also some medical issues. But he is 18. School is supportive, but he's almost to graduation, and again, he's 18. We had not ever pursued medical conservatorship or anything like that because before now lots of things were going right and we don't take that lightly, removing civil liberties from another young adult. In the past week, Quentin got another room at the motel. He messaged my son to come stay with him, and he did. My son sat in the room and watched his dogs while he worked, and I imagine they smoked and hung out when Quentin was not working. My son would respond to text messages from us but asserted he is an adult and can go where he wants. He missed a week of medication, school, part of his part-time job, and another important appointment. Being Quentin's friend is more important than all of these things, and he feels good helping his friend and says Quentin is like a brother to me, he's the best brother I've ever had. Quentin's own family has kicked him out. They are nearby. No idea who watches the dogs when my son is not available. Quentin doesn't drive, and earlier this week my son gave Quentin his bike because he needs it more than me. Our son came home yesterday and had a complete psychiatric crisis because he's been unmedicated, and probably also high drinking, for so many days. His medical issues are exacerbated. He was banging his head on the concrete floor, and when we called emergency services, he spit at the police, so they put a spit hood on him and restrained him. It was horrific and he was begging for help. We're not sure when he will be stable enough to come home and may need a medical procedure. He was coherent today, crying, apologizing, but still 100% certain Quentin is his friend. I also feel terrible because I know that at age 18 it's a good thing for my son to be not telling us everything, having his own friends and life, etc. I look forward to that day. He does have other friends who are closer to his age and their hanging out is more appropriate, but these other kids have busier lives and more responsibilities. They aren't available 24/7. Quentin is, and my son feels so good when his phone pings and it's his friend, needing him. How can I make this man's life miserable? Or at least, make it too uncomfortable or risky to keep hanging out with my son? Nothing to harm or stress the dogs, please. It's not their fault and my son would never forgive me. Some of OOP's comments. OOP responded to all of them on May 9, 2024, 4 days later. Commenter. Sounds like you might need to pursue medical conservatorship, which I know you don't want to do, but it sounds like you definitely have grounds and it's the lesser of two evils at this point. I don't see things ending up well without intervention. Oop, thank you for this, and others who prompt me to reconsider conservatorship. I called a lawyer on Monday. I had already done research and collected that info, but had a lot of hope that once sheltered work started up and he had less free time it might not be necessary. Commenter, pay someone to be your son's friend, that's more of a caretaker. Honestly, this guy sounds at the very least like a scammer. Sometimes the only way people get deep in one scam is a second scam. It's sad but there's literally a bot on our laws scams for recovery scams. Basically people promise to recover your loss for some fee. It's not great but if you could afford someone to offer better friendship and then point out that his old friend is lame it'll be like positive peer pressure. Maybe help the person could help them join appropriate opportunities for new friendship then phase out. OOP. This is another great idea and I appreciated the comments below it here in the thread. I have reached out to some young adults older than him that might serve as mentors or fitness coaches. Hang out with him, work out, play basketball. Build positive connections with people who don't wish him ill. Thank you for this. I have a few possibilities here in our area. Commenter. If it was my son, there's nothing I wouldn't do to ensure his safety and well-being. My advice would be to just make this man's life miserable. Contact his work and make complaints against him. Tell them he's selling weed or is abusive to customers. If he has a room, report him for dealing drugs and threats of violence. If he stays in the park, phone the police and claim his dogs are attacking people in the park. All anonymously, of course. Maybe nip down to the park late at night and set off a shitload of fireworks near to his tent. Do this over and over again. Make it your life's mission to ruin him. He'll move on when it all gets too much. My son is autistic too and him being taken advantage of is a great worry for me. I hope it all works out for you. OOP. Thank you for this. I did contact his employer because my son isn't the only teen in the neighborhood Quentin is giving alcohol to. I also contacted management at his motel where he occasionally stays to let them know this person was letting a vulnerable teen stay there, and miss school, and meds, and that it was surely against their policy. Quentin was not happy I contacted his work in the motel. I felt really empowered by so many of the comments here to engage around this and make his life more difficult. Get son a dog, yes, and great insight to others who mentioned maybe getting my son a dog. He actually has a medical alert service dog and other pet dogs, and cat, and fish, so animals are truly a special interest of his. Heartbreakingly, he will leave the service dog with us because the dog is safe and we love them, but Quentin's dogs need him. But yes, we lean on the gifts he has with animals to build other areas of his life. Talk to the police again. I just spoke to the local police again tonight. Sometimes they lean heavily on he's 18, he's an adult, but some of them, when they get to know him a bit, realize he's vulnerable and are more willing to help. Keeping him busy. Yes. Son has an interview tomorrow at an animal adoption center. This is the type of setting that would keep him busy, help him feel like he's doing something important, and give him better adults to be around. Commenter, get rid of the dogs. Go on Facebook and post how they are being abused, and an intervention must take place. Get rid of the tent. Is he camping illegally? Call the cops. Get rid of Quentin. He's not good for anyone right now, not even himself. A major intervention is 100% necessary for all parties involved, for the police, for you, and for your son. There is so much to lose with inaction. OOP. I did part of this evening. Son got home from the hospital last night, back on meds, stable, goes to his special interest class at school, does great. Going for a bike ride. Lo and behold, he's back out with Quentin and the dogs. It's after 10 p.m. so the park is closed. Quentin is pitching the tent. I called the non-emergency line to let the police know a homeless man with 2 pit bulls was sleeping in that park near the playground. Police went and moved him, and sent son back to us. I will keep doing this. I might also flyer homes near the park to let them know there's a homeless man with 2 pit bulls who provides alcohol and weed to teens in the park near their home, to help make it less comfortable for him to be there. Thank you for this advice. Commenter, you could see if Quentin would accept cash and a bus ticket to leave town. It would be the least messy way to disentangle him from your son. Or if you can round up a group of scary people in a van, a different kind of ride out. I appreciate and applaud the autonomy you've given your son, but it's time for his own sake. OOP, thank you for this. I did go find Quentin after seeing this advice and offer him cash to leave my son alone and stop taking his calls. He refused and promptly told son that I had offered. He also told my son I'm too attached to him. Block the number on son's phone, thank you for these. Yes, we've blocked his number in the past, and given son an old flip phone when smartphones were too much to manage healthily, but Quentin doesn't even always have a phone. They video chat on Instagram. They also can borrow anyone's phone, log into Insta, and communicate. Go with him to every hangout. I love this advice to crash every hangout. I started doing that tonight. Quentin was so mad, he told me I'm harassing him. He finally walked off and told my son not to follow him. Son is mad at me and parroting that Quentin says I'm too attached. Fine with me, I can do this every day. Great advice. Update post. A few months ago I came here asking for tips to help get a man named Quentin out of my son's life. I'm super grateful for all of the ideas and many kind words. As of today, and for the last 3 months, my son is happy and healthy. We found a transitional living house for him with 5 other young men and 2 house managers, and a dog. He's learning to be an adult, learning to cook, clean, and get a job. It includes therapy, gym every day, yoga, skateboarding, truly a dream come true. The house is about 40 minutes away from where Quentin lives and my son feels he has friends, is purposeful and feels adult and is learning and busy. They will also do job training. Before this happened, I took as much of your advice as was possible. I contacted the manager at Quentin's workplace and the motel he occasionally stays at. I told them Quentin was allowing a disabled teenager to stay with him and giving him, and other teens, alcohol. Manager is a local small business owner and took my information seriously. I also went to the motel and pointed out the sign that said all guests must have ID, my son does not. I told the manager I hoped he was abiding by rules or I'd contact the corporate. I also started calling the non-emergency PD line when he was camped after park closing time and leaving his dogs during the day. PD would move him along. Someone had the great advice of being his best friend and showing up all the time. So I did. Quentin wants to see my son. Hey, here I am too. I'm at the park, I'm at your work, I'm near the motel. I even prepared flyers to let others in the park neighborhood, with a playground for small children, know about the tent, camping, and unsupervised unneutered pit bulls. Quentin got increasingly upset. He said I was stalking him and he was going to call the police. I said politely, please do. I'd love to tell the police more about what you're doing with my son and other vulnerable young people. I told him, you want to be in my son's life, I'm in your life. Up to you. I really felt bold after all of your advice and encouragement. I was willing to keep going for the long haul. In the meantime, we found a lawyer and I started tapping into resources to find my son some kind of job training, because he really wants to help and feel grown up. For a few weeks he was working at a drugstore, through a program through a local agency. That was huge for him, stocking and cleaning and helping people. It also kept him busy for about a month and kind of removed Quentin slightly. Quentin either got sick of seeing me or afraid of losing his job. The location of the motel he had been staying at occasionally stopped letting him, so he had to start using another location much farther away. Farther to walk to work and harder to deal with. I think he realized my son wasn't worth the trouble I was causing, and just stopped contacting him. Thank you so much for all of your ideas. I was so focused on trying to fix it from my son's end as his mom I had no idea how to actually deal with Q. You all were fantastic. Huge thanks from the mom of a happy, healthy, busy and purposeful young adult son. Some comments. Commenter, glad things in your situation are going in a positive direction, but wondering why you have to mention unneutered pit bulls in such a negative context. I'm 100% about spay and neutering all animals right now cause this country is in a crisis with the homeless pet population, but I feel like your statement wasn't mentioned because of the same reason. OOP, absolutely. Thank you for naming that. I'm also worried about the animals. One reason I struggled at first with what to do is if my son weren't a factor, I would feel drawn to helping Q and his animals, or at least pointing him to resources for that. I have colleagues who work for organizations who help those without homes to stay with their pets, often their family. Since I wrote the first post, one of these dogs has had puppies. I also tried to help my son realize that he wasn't responsible for the dogs and it was a hard life for all of them. Until it became clear how in danger my son was. I guess I mention it as another example of how the adult in the situation was not being responsible, and how the untended dogs were not safe for themselves or other unfixed animals who might come into the park. For me, the state of the animals is also sad and one reason my son was so compelled to help. which is a negative. I feel for them and never wanted to harm or scare them. Traditional Plan 7423. For anybody in Houston TX that may see this. I work for a nonprofit, SER Jobs. We offer training and licensure to youth, young adults, and veterans. Financial literacy assistance for everybody. Our goal is long-term financial stability through training and job placement and financial education. We are completely funded by federal, state, city, and private donors. All classes, certifications, and licensure are completely at no cost to you, the member. Please look us up. Please donate if you find it something that you support and help us to continue our mission. SER Jobs for Progress in Houston, Texas. Find us at serjobs.org and on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and any other platform I missed. We have community events that you can participate in and help us continue to serve anybody who wishes for a brighter future. ETA, sorry if it may sound like taking attention from OP, but our services are helping many in this situation. And we will do anything it takes to see our members succeed. I may just be admin in accounting, but I wholeheartedly believe in our organization and mission. OP, thank you, amazing. Yes, an org like yours is helping us immensely and I'm so grateful others can help my son and I can be his mom. Thank you for your time and work. I discovered that my parents have been lying to me about my food allergies my entire life. Am I justified in cutting them out of my life? Original post. I'm using a throwaway account because I have family on Reddit. Ever since I was a little girl, my parents have told me that I am allergic to both milk and chocolate. The story goes that I broke into severe hives on my very first Halloween. My mom had given me some milk chocolate and I had to be rushed to the hospital with hives and breathing problems where I was diagnosed with both chocolate and milk allergies. Ever since then, I have never been allowed to eat anything containing chocolate or cow's milk. Over the summer, one of my college friends from out of state invited me to come stay with her for a few weeks. While I was in her state, I'd decided to use the opportunity to visit my godmother aunt who I haven't been able to see since I was a young child. My aunt was thrilled to see me and we spent a whole day hiking and just catching up. When we stopped for lunch, my aunt pulled out some granola bars, but they had chocolate in them so I couldn't eat them. I told her that I was allergic to chocolate and she was stunned. My aunt told me that I have never been allergic to chocolate and that my mom was lying to me. She told me the story of how I had gotten ill from daycare and my mom had tried to sue the daycare owner for some stupid reason that no one was sure of. My mom was pissed off because she thought the daycare owner was flirting with my dad and she wanted to get the daycare shut down. My mom then invented the story about me and the chocolate at the Halloween party. She made sure not to tell the daycare about the fake allergy and then waited for the daycare to feed me food with chocolate in it so that she could sue. When that didn't work, my mom then invented a story about me being allergic to milk. When Aunt tried to call her out on it, my mom stopped speaking to her and that silence has continued until the present. Needless to say, I was stunned. I wanted so badly to believe that my mom was telling the truth and that my aunt was lying. I waited until we got back to my aunt's house and I took a bite of one of the granola bars. And I was not allergic, at all. I was very upset and decided to call my dad. Our conversation was so crazy and out of nowhere that I don't know what else to do but type it out. The conversation went like this. Me. Dad, were you aware that I am not actually allergic to chocolate and milk like you and Mom have told me? Dad. Don't be ridiculous. You've never been able to eat chocolate without a reaction. Why would we make that up? Me. I'm not trying to accuse you of making it up. I was just asking if you were aware that I do not have the allergy. I just ate some chocolate and I didn't have any reaction to it. Did I ever get any allergy tests done? Dad. I will have to ask your mother. I am upset that you're trying to call us liars over this. Me. When did I say anyone was lying? What are you talking about? My mom then jumped into the conversation. Speakerphone? Mom. Honey, don't you remember that you had hives at your 10th birthday party? Your friend had given you a Tootsie Pop and you were allergic to the chocolate. Me. Mom, I never had a 10th birthday party and I don't know what you're talking about. I was just curious if I ever had a real allergy test done for chocolate, because I was just able to eat some without a reaction. I'm just trying to figure out if I can eat chocolate or not now. Mom. I don't know why you need to know if you had a test or not. You can't eat chocolate because we say you can't eat chocolate. You're being a little liar right now. How dare you say we never gave you a birthday party that year? You've always been ungrateful and now you can't even remember the party we gave you. Me. Mom, I know I never had a 10th birthday party because I was at summer camp. Why are you trying to make me believe that I did? My mom then started screaming at me and I just hung up the phone because it was so loud and I couldn't hear any individual words. I silenced my phone and watched as she proceeded to call me 40 times in a row. The entire time my aunt was watching in horror. My aunt then gave me a hug and told me that this is why she doesn't have a relationship with my mother. My mom has always done this, lied to people and then tried to convince them it was the truth. I am very upset about this entire situation. The conversation was simply one of the craziest things I've seen, and I don't know who these people are anymore. It creeped me out and I don't think I ever want to talk to them again, or else they will try to turn on me. Am I right in wanting to cut these people out of my life? TL.R. Mom and Dad always told me I was allergic to chocolate. I went to visit an estranged aunt in a different state and the aunt revealed my mom made it up to try to sue a daycare. I ate the food I was supposedly allergic to and was fine. I called my parents and they tried to say I was calling them liars and then tried to make up a birthday party. It was crazy and I think they're crazy and I just need to know if it's okay to cut them out of my life. Relevant comments. Flowers 4. I'm just amazed you haven't figured it out sooner. I am allergic to various nuts, and it is said that about once a year I accidentally eat one. But when I was younger my parents kept me away from eating all nuts to be safe. They had chocolate and milk banned from the house and always told my teachers and such about my allergies at the beginning of each school year. I also had to keep an EpiPen in my car starting after I got my license, just in case something bad happened. I didn't have any reason to doubt them until a few months ago when it all came crashing down. Adds about her parents. My mom and dad are two peas in a pod and they are best friends. If she's a narcissist, then I'm 100% positive he is one too. I can't afford an allergy test, but at least I know I'm not going to die from chocolate anymore. I don't think I'll be able to pretend that I forgot about the party because it was so hurtful that she tried to lie to me about it. I don't ever want to speak to her again. She doesn't even remember my birthdays and she's my mom. I'll check out the subreddit. Thanks. Update. It's been a while, but I felt the need to update because my mom purchased a one-way ticket to Crazy Town after I made my first post. To summarize what I have found out since my last post. I am not allergic to chocolate. Chocolate is amazing and I am now addicted to the chocolate waterfall at Golden Corral. I am not allergic to milk. I am mildly lactose intolerant, but I was always told it was an allergy to a protein in the milk. I can drink Lactaid with no issues. I had an allergy test done and it confirmed that I'm not allergic to anything except for pollen and some animal dander. My mother is a psycho. After I made my original post, I decided that I was going to cut contact with my parents except through email. My mom called me over 1,000 times the first week and I eventually had to get a new phone and simply stopped answering the old phone and let the battery in it die. To put this in perspective, she used to call me 2-3 times a week and this sudden increase was pure insanity. Since my mom knew where my dorm room was located on campus, I requested to be moved into one of the more private dorm buildings because I was concerned for my privacy. I didn't tell anyone except my college friends about the move and I had thought that everything would be fine. Everything was fine for a few weeks, until I got a call from one of the adjunct professors to help tutor one of the new students. My school has a master tutor list and any student can call the tutors and arrange for help for free. US tutors are paid by the school. I told the adjunct that I would meet the student in the library in a few and grabbed my books and walked over to the library. Lo and behold, the new student was my mom. My mother decided that she would enroll in classes as a student in order to contact me. When I saw her, I froze and immediately tried to leave the library, but she followed me outside and wouldn't leave me alone. I eventually managed to duck into one of the fraternity apartments and was able to lose her, but she has been basically stalking me on campus ever since. I tried to report her to the school, but the campus police told me that since she never made any threats, that there's nothing I can do. I tried reporting her to the normal police as well, but was told the same thing. My mom has not left me any voicemails, or texts or anything at all that I can use to prove what she's doing. My RA has ensured that my mom is banned from my dorm building, only upperclassmen are allowed and my mom is technically a freshman, but beyond that I'm running out of options. My mom posted on Facebook that she is signing up for the same classes as I need to complete my major next semester. She posted her schedule and we are in one of the same classes. And I don't know what else I can do to stop the crazy. She claims that she didn't do anything to hurt me and that I'm just lying about the chocolate and milk allergies. My aunt had to go out of the country for work and I feel so alone with dealing with all of this. My dad has basically ditched and moved out of my mom's house and I haven't been able to get in contact with him either. Any ideas for how to stop the crazy? TL.ER, my mom lied to me for years and told me I had several food allergies. I caught her in the lie and cut off contact. She is now enrolled in the same classes I need to complete my degree and I don't know what I can do to stop her from stalking me. Relevant comments. replying to a downvoting comment saying to be a mean girl and take charge. OP, I don't think she's physically or financially dangerous, the only way she can hurt me is mentally and emotionally. I've been able to play it off with my friends so far because she is living and breathing the stereotype of the crazy Asian mother. If I can get this meeting arranged, I'm going to drink a carton of chocolate milk. I'm not worried about her because she's always been this crazy. This is just the first time that her anger has been directed at me. How did the mom find OOP's schedule? She found out from the degree catalog they publish each year, the one that lists all the classes you need to graduate. She signed up for one of the 200-level classes I had left and it doesn't need any prereqs at all. She's actually really smart and she somehow managed to test out of a lot of the core classes. She'll be taking Calc 2 next semester. When told to contact the department head or professor and have her mom removed, I'm typing up an email to the department chair now and I'm waiting for a call back from the student affairs office. I've still got the phone, but the police wouldn't even look at it when I tried to tell them about her stalking me. It's an iPhone so it saves all the records of when she tried to call me. Hi there, it's my first time posting here because I was hesitant to give my mom the narcissist label. That being said, I don't really have a better term to describe her behavior and a ton of people pointed me to this subreddit after I posted on our relationships about my mom. To summarize, my mom and dad lied to me and told me I had allergies, chocolate and milk. I believed them for years until I met my estranged aunt and she spilled the beans and revealed the web of lies created by my mother. I decided to go no contact with my parents and my mom snapped and enrolled at my university and was basically stalking me and enrolling in the same classes I need for next semester. I contacted the student affairs department and they arranged a meeting between myself and my mom regarding the stalking. At the meeting, the administrator heard both sides of our stories and pretty much caught my mom in another lie. My mom had her best poker face on and tried to claim that she hadn't contacted me in months. She denied that she had called me repeatedly, denied that she ever tried to get tutoring from me, denied everything she did. She tried to act like she was the victim and that I was just a mean and disrespectful daughter who hated her mom. And that's when I produced my iPhone and showed the administrator the call log from when my mom called me over 1,000 times in a row. This is not an exaggeration, the call log hit quadruple digits. My mom then tried to deny that the number was her cell number, but the administrator looked it up in the student database and it proved she was lying. My mom tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. The administrator made us both sign contracts that said that we each must not contact each other for the remainder of the school year, otherwise we would be suspended from classes. My mom was forced to change her schedule so that she would not be in the same classes as I was in. The administrator made it clear that if she tried to circumvent the contract, even if by accident, that she could have her student ID banned from entering the student center or other buildings if I was inside. They are controlled by RFID chips and we have to swipe them to enter certain buildings. After the meeting ended, I was so happy and I felt free for the first time in weeks. A few nights later, my dad called me and left a voicemail informing me that my mom tried to commit suicide with sleeping pills and that she was going to the hospital. I thought it was fake at first, so I called the hospital and they put me through to my dad who was in the waiting room. My dad laid into me pretty hard and called me names and stuff about the whole situation and then told me that if I didn't want my mom to die, I shouldn't have made her life miserable. So that's my Thanksgiving vacation and I don't really know what to think or do right now. I'm going to go bake a pumpkin pie and try to forget about it all, but food tastes like ash in my mouth. Relevant comments C1 as. Honey, it's not your fault. Not even a little. She is a very sick person. This suicide attempt is the inevitable conclusion of a long struggle with serious mental illness. Also, while we take all threats of suicide seriously on this sub, her failure to kill herself is notable. It is not hard to kill yourself. Even pop culture offers a few methods which are surefire, and a quick Google search will quickly turn up a dozen more. The fact that she didn't look for this information, and didn't complete her suicide, suggests that this was more of an attempt to manipulate than an attempt to leave the planet. I qualify this quickly with a link to suicide hotlines should anyone be reading this who is considering suicide genuinely. It's a nasty topic to be sure, but it needed to be said. She isn't dead, and that's significant. OOP. Thanks for saying this. My mom is incredibly intelligent and resourceful and I know that if she really wanted to die she would have been successful. She can recite stats off the top of her head and I've heard her saying before that most successful suicides involve guns. I know for a fact that she knows what it takes for suicide and she's smart enough to find a way to hurt herself without leaving lasting damage. She also made sure to put me down on her list of approved visitors and sign all the paperwork, so that the nurses can tell me information without violating HIPAA. She knows that I'm the type of person who would have called the hospital and then I would know all the details and she could guilt me with them.